Ice-cold, wealthy CEO saw his pregnant ex-wife fainting on the street. Then he did the unthinkable and shocked everyone. The grocery store parking lot looked like a crime scene. Police cars and ambulance, curious neighbors forming a circle around something. Someone on the hot concrete. Have you ever seen someone from your past when you least expected it? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. He was the type of man who fired people by email until the day he saw his ex-wife collapse on a Newark sidewalk, carrying a secret that could destroy them both. Preston Whitmore crushed dreams for breakfast and $8 million deals for lunch. That Tuesday morning, he sat in his Manhattan boardroom, 20 floors above the chaos of regular people's lives, watching grown men sweat as he decided their futures with a single nod. Revenues up 30%. His CFO stammered, sliding charts across polished marble. The Chicago acquisition. Preston's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He never answered unknown numbers. It buzzed again. Then again. Something twisted in his chest. The same feeling he'd had 3 years ago when Harper walked out of their Greenwich mansion, suitcase in hand, diamond ring left on the kitchen counter like a death certificate. He answered, "Mr. Whitmore?" The voice cracked with panic. "This is Maria from Newark General Hospital. There's been an accident. A woman. She had your number in her emergency contacts. Harper Davis." The boardroom disappeared. 20 executives vanished. The empire he'd built with blood and ruthless ambition crumbled into nothing because his Harper, was hurt. "Is she alive?" The words scraped his throat raw. "She's conscious. But sir, she's pregnant. Very pregnant." Preston's world stopped rotating. Harper Davis, the woman who'd loved him completely and left him broken, was alive, hurt, and carrying a child that couldn't possibly exist. "I'm coming." He stood, ignoring the shocked faces around the table. "Cancel everything. Cancel it all." The black Escalade tore through Manhattan traffic like a bullet seeking its target. Preston's driver had never seen his boss's hand shake, never heard him whisper a woman's name like a prayer. Newark unfolded outside his window, cracked sidewalks, corner stores with bulletproof glass, children playing in streets that Greenwich society pretended didn't exist. This was Harper's world now, the world she'd chosen over his. The grocery store parking lot looked like a crime scene. Police cars and ambulance, curious neighbors forming a circle around something. Someone on the hot concrete. Preston stepped out of his Escalade, and the crowd parted like he was Moses commanding the Red Sea. Designer shoes crunched on broken glass. His $1,000 suit felt ridiculous here, like wearing a tuxedo to a funeral. Then he saw her. Harper lay on the cracked asphalt, her dark skin pale as winter, one hand pressed to her swollen belly, the other reaching for help that wasn't coming fast enough. She wore a yellow sundress, bright as sunshine, cheap as hope, that stretched tight over a pregnancy that made his knees buckle. Harper. Her name fell from his lips like a confession. Her eyes opened, those same warm brown eyes that had looked at him with complete trust on their wedding day, complete disappointment on their divorce day. Recognition flashed across her face, followed immediately by fear. Not relief. Fear. "No," she whispered, struggling to sit up. "No, no, no. You can't be here. You can't." "Ma'am, please lie still," the paramedic said, checking her pulse. "Sir, are you family?" Preston stared at Harper's belly, doing math that made his head spin. 8 months pregnant, maybe more. Their divorce was final 3 years ago. She disappeared completely. No forwarding address, no phone number, no trace of the woman who'd once been his entire world. But the timing. "I'm her husband." He lied smoothly, the way he lied to shareholders and competitors and himself. "Ex-husband," Harper corrected, her voice sharp despite her weakness. "Very ex." The paramedic looked between them. Billionaire in his perfect suit, pregnant woman on damaged ground. "We need to get her to the hospital. She's showing signs of distress." Have you ever seen someone from your past when you least expected it? When your heart wasn't ready? Tell me in the comments what that felt like. Preston climbed into the ambulance without invitation, ignoring Harper's protests. The space felt smaller than his walk-in closet, but holding her hand felt like coming home after years of being lost. "Why are you here?" she whispered as sirens wailed around them. "I could ask you the same thing." His thumb traced her knuckles. Still no wedding ring, he noticed. "Harper, is that baby—" "Don't." Her grip tightened. "Don't ask questions you're not ready to hear answered." The ambulance doors slammed shut, trapping them in a metal box with 3 years of silence and a secret that could rewrite everything they thought they knew about their marriage, their divorce, and their future. Follow along as we discover why the richest man in New York is kneeling on a Newark sidewalk, and why the woman he divorced is carrying secrets that could change everything. As the hospital came into view, Preston's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She was supposed to die today. You weren't supposed to save her. The marriage that made headlines ended in whispers, but the real story was buried in a Connecticut mansion where family secrets run deeper than old money. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Preston paced the waiting area like a caged animal while doctors worked on Harper behind closed doors. Every few minutes, his phone rang. Business emergencies that felt meaningless now. Reporters who'd somehow already caught wind of his presence in Newark. He ignored them all. 3 years. 3 years since Harper had walked out of their life with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. 3 years since he'd let his family poison the only real thing he'd ever had. The memory hit him like a physical blow. Their wedding day at the Greenwich estate, Harper glowing in white silk, his mother Victoria watching from the front row with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. He'd been so stupidly happy, so convinced love could conquer the empire he'd inherited. "You can't be serious about this girl," Victoria had whispered during the reception, her manicured fingers digging into his arm. "She's pretty, I'll give you that. But she's from Trenton, Preston. Her father fixes cars. Her mother cleans houses. I love her," he'd said, young and naive enough to think that mattered. Love fades, breeding doesn't. But Harper hadn't faded. She fought his mother's passive-aggressive attacks, his father's cold dismissal, the society wise who smiled to her face and shredded her behind her back. She tried to fit into their world of charity galas and country clubs, designer gowns, and fake friendships. The Greenwich estate had become a beautiful prison. Harper grew quieter each month, smaller somehow, like their mansion was swallowing her whole. She'd stopped laughing at his jokes, stopped reaching for him in bed, stopped believing she belonged anywhere near his life. "Mr. Whitmore?" A doctor appeared, clipboard in hand, exhaustion written across her face. "Your wife is stable. The baby appears healthy, though we're running more tests." "She's not." Preston started, then stopped. "How far along is she?" 34 weeks. The baby could survive if born now, but we prefer a few more weeks of development." The doctor studied his face. "I'm Dr. Chun. I've been treating Harper throughout her pregnancy." Preston's chest tightened. "Throughout her pregnancy?" "Every appointment, every ultrasound. She's been very consistent with her prenatal care." Dr. Chen's voice carried a hint of curiosity. "She's listed Marcus Thompson as her emergency contact, not you." Marcus Thompson. The name hit Preston like ice water. He'd never heard it before, but something about the way the doctor said it, familiar, respectful, made his stomach clench. "Can I see her?" Dr. Chen hesitated. "She's asked not to see any visitors right now. She needs rest." Preston had built a billion-dollar empire by refusing to accept no as an answer. But this wasn't business. This was Harper, and she'd already told him once that he couldn't force his way back in her life. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "Media outside hospital. Your mother called 6 times. Says it's urgent." Victoria. Of course she'd already heard. Victoria heard everything, controlled everything, destroyed everything that threatened the Whitmore legacy. The memory crashed over him. Their last fight, the night Harper left. He'd found her packing, tears streaming down her face, hands shaking as she folded the dresses his money had bought. "Don't go," he'd begged, dropping to his knees beside their bed. "We can work this out. We can. Your mother hired investigators to dig up dirt on my family." Harper's voice had been hollow, empty of the warmth he'd fallen in love with. She offered my parents money to convince me to leave you. She told me I'd never be good enough, that I was embarrassing you. Harper, I didn't know. You knew. She'd zipped the suitcase with devastating finality. You knew and you chose them. Every time, you chose them. She'd been right. Every family dinner, every social event, every moment his mother had made a cutting remark or his father had ignored Harper completely, Preston had stayed silent. He'd chosen peace over protection, family loyalty over the woman he claimed to love. Have you ever felt like an outsider in your own relationship? When love wasn't enough to bridge two different worlds? Share your experience below. Preston, a voice behind him made him turn. A tall black man in scrubs approached. Mid-30s, kind eyes, the build of someone who worked with his hands. He moved with quiet confidence, the way men do when they know exactly where they belong. You must be Marcus. Preston's voice came out colder than he intended. Marcus studied him with the careful assessment of someone protecting what he loved. Harper told me about you. I thought you were taller. How is she? Scared. Confused about why you're here. Marcus crossed his arms. She's been doing fine without you for 3 years. Build a good life. Why show up now and mess that up? The question hit like a slap. Because Preston didn't have an answer that didn't sound selfish. Because seeing Harper collapsed on that sidewalk had shattered every wall he'd built around his heart. Because the baby she carried might be his, and that possibility was rewiring his entire brain. I got a call. That wasn't meant for you. Marcus's voice stayed level, professional. Harper kept your number for emergencies. Didn't think she'd ever need it. But she did need it. No, Marcus said quietly. She needed someone who'd been there every day for 3 years. Someone who drove her to doctor appointments and helped her paint the nursery and held her hair when morning sickness made her sick. She needed someone who chose her first. The words cut deep because they were true. Marcus had been everything Preston should have been: present, consistent, loyal. While Preston built empires, Marcus had built a life with a woman Preston had thrown away. The baby Preston started isn't your concern. Marcus stepped closer, and Preston caught the scent of hospital soap and quiet strength. Harper doesn't owe you explanations. She doesn't owe you anything. In a hospital waiting room, Preston's mother appeared like a ghost from his nightmares. Victoria Whitmore swept through the automatic doors in head-to-toe black, her silver hair perfect despite the late hour, her smile sharp as diamonds. I told you she'd come back, Victoria said, her voice carrying the particular venom she reserved for threats to family reputation. I just didn't expect her to bring evidence. Some secrets are kept to protect love. Others are kept to destroy it. Harper's pregnancy was both. Victoria Whitmore commanded attention the way hurricanes command coastlines, devastating and impossible to ignore. She glided through Newer General's emergency room like she owned the building, nurses and doctors stepping aside instinctively. Mother, Preston's voice carried 3 years of exhaustion. How did you? I have people everywhere, darling. Victoria's pale blue eyes swept the waiting room with obvious disgust. Though I must say, this is quite the setting for a family reunion. Marcus positioned himself between Victoria and the hallway leading to Harper's room. Ma'am, visiting hours are over. Victoria looked Marcus up and down like she was pricing livestock. And you are someone who belongs here. How charming. Victoria's smile could have frozen water. Preston, we need to talk. Privately. Whatever you have to say. The blood work shows traces of ricin poisoning. Dr. Chun appeared suddenly, clipboard clutched tight, her face grave. We need to know what Harper ate or drank in the last 12 hours. The waiting room went dead silent. Preston felt the floor shift beneath his feet. Ricin, poison. Someone had tried to kill Harper. That's impossible, Marcus said, but his voice shook. She was with me this morning. We had breakfast at her apartment. Nothing unusual. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Satisfaction or guilt, Preston couldn't tell which. Mr. Whitmore, I need to speak with you about your wife's condition, Dr. Chen continued. The poisoning is mild, thankfully. If she consumed more, or if she hadn't gotten medical attention when she did, she would have died, Preston finished, the words tasting like ash. The baby shows signs of distress, but appears to be fighting strong. We're monitoring both mother and child carefully. Preston's phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. Round one goes to you. But this isn't over. Doctor, Victoria stepped forward, producing a business card with practiced elegance. I'm Victoria Whitmore, Preston's mother. I'd like to arrange for Harper's transfer to Greenwich Hospital. Better facilities, private room, top specialists. Mother, no. The patient specifically requested to stay here, Dr. Chun said firmly. She trusts her medical team. Victoria's smile never wavered, but her voice dropped to Arctic temperatures. Of course, though I do hope the insurance situation won't be complicated. Medical bills can be so overwhelming for people without proper coverage. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Preston had seen his mother destroy people with exactly this kind of calculated kindness, offering help that came with invisible chains. Harper's medical expenses are covered, Preston said quickly. Whatever she needs, however long she needs it. How generous. Victoria's tone suggested anything but approval. Though I wonder if she'll accept charity from the man who, well, water under the bridge, I suppose. Dr. Chun looked between them with growing confusion. I'll need to check with the patient about visitors. She's been very specific about who she wants to see. Marcus followed the doctor down the hallway, leaving Preston alone with his mother and the weight of 3 years' worth of buried truths. You knew, Preston said quietly. You knew she was pregnant. I know lots of things, darling. Victoria examined her perfect manicure. I know Harper Davis legally changed her name back from Whitmore 6 months after your divorce. I know she's been working as a social worker in Newark, making $38,000 a year. I know she's been living in a 1-bedroom apartment above a bodega, and I know exactly who's been helping her pay the rent. Each fact landed like a physical blow. Harper had been struggling while he lived in luxury, working with families in crisis while he created crises for his competitors, building a life of service while he built monuments to his own ego. And I know, Victoria continued, that she never filed for any support, never asked you for money, never tried to contact you about the pregnancy, which raises interesting questions about paternity, doesn't it? The timing could be coincidental, or it could be convenient. Victoria's voice carried the cold calculation that had built their family fortune. DNA tests are so simple these days, though I suspect Harper might resist that particular invasion of privacy. Preston's head was spinning. The baby could be his, the math worked barely. Their last night together had been passionate and desperate, both of them knowing it was ending, but unable to stop touching each other like they were memorizing every moment. But it could also be Marcus's baby. Marcus, who'd been there for every doctor's appointment, every milestone, every moment Preston had missed. There's something else. Victoria moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. The poison wasn't random. Someone specifically targeted Harper today. How do you? Because I pay attention to threats to our family. And Harper Davis, with her noble poverty and her mysterious pregnancy, is exactly the kind of threat that could destroy everything we've built. The words hit Preston like ice water. You think I had something to do with? I think you need to be very careful about the choices you make in the next few hours. Victoria's smile was razor sharp. The media will have this story by morning. Billionaire's ex-wife, dramatic hospital rescue, secret pregnancy. It's quite the narrative. Down the hallway, a door opened. Marcus emerged from Harper's room, his face tight with worry and something that looked like fear. She wants to see you, he said to Preston. But she's different. The poisoning, it's affecting her memory. Preston's heart stopped. What do you mean? She remembers being married to you. She remembers loving you. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. But she doesn't remember why she left. Have you ever had to face someone who'd forgotten your worst mistakes? When they looked at you with love you no longer deserved? Let me know in the comments what that would feel like. Preston pushed past Marcus and Victoria, past doctors and nurses, and the weight of his own guilt. Harper's room was small and sterile, machines beeping steadily, monitoring the life he'd almost lost. She looked tiny in the hospital bed, her dark skin pale against white sheets, her hands protective over her swollen belly. But when she saw him, her face lit up with the same radiant smile she'd worn on their wedding day. "Preston." Her voice was soft, wondering. "You came." "Of course I came." He knelt beside her bed, afraid to touch her, afraid to break whatever spell was letting her look at him like he was still her hero. "I had the strangest dream," she whispered, her fingers finding his. "I dreamed that we weren't together anymore, that you'd chosen your family over me, that I was alone and scared and—" She looked down at her belly, "that this baby was growing up without a father." Preston's throat closed. "Harper, but you're here now. You came when I needed you." Her thumb traced his knuckles, the same gesture that had always calmed him down. "The baby's okay, right? Our baby." The blood work revealed traces of ricin poisoning. As Harper squeezed Preston's hand, she whispered for words that shattered his world. "They found me first." He spent 3 years believing she left him. She spent 3 years hiding from the family that wanted her gone, permanently. Harper's memory returned in pieces, like a shattered mirror reassembling itself. Preston watched her face change as reality crept back in, the soft smile fading, the trust in her eyes hardening into recognition and fear. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, pulling her hand away from his. "I specifically said, Harper, someone poisoned you." Preston leaned forward, desperate to keep the connection they'd had for those brief, perfect moments. "Someone tried to kill you and the baby." She laughed, but it sounded broken. "Welcome to my life for the past 3 years." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" Harper struggled to sit up, one hand protective over her belly. The machines around her bed beeped faster, responding to her elevated heart rate. "I mean, your family has been very creative about encouraging me to disappear permanently." Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "Car brake lines that mysteriously failed. A gas leak in my first apartment that wasn't actually accidental. Food poisoning that put me in the hospital twice last year." Preston's world tilted sideways. "That's impossible. My family wouldn't." "Your family hired private investigators to follow me for 6 months after our divorce." Harper's eyes blazed with old anger. "They offered my parents $50,000 to convince me to stay away from you. They made sure I couldn't get jobs at any social services agency in Connecticut or New York. They've been systematically destroying my life. Preston, today was just the first time they tried to end it." The room felt like it was closing in. Preston thought about his mother's satisfied smile in the waiting room, her casual mention of knowing exactly where Harper lived and worked. "The baby," he started, "is not your problem." Harper's voice cracked. "Has never been your problem. I made sure of that. But if she's mine, she—" Harper's laugh was bitter. "You don't even know if you're having a son or daughter, but you think you have rights? You think showing up here erases 3 years of silence?" A soft knock interrupted them. Marcus peered around the door, his face tight with concern. "Harper, you okay?" Your heart rate spiked. Preston watched Harper's entire demeanor change. The defensive walls crumbled, replaced by genuine warmth and gratitude. "I'm okay. Just processing." She reached out her hand, and Marcus took it without hesitation, settling into the chair beside her bed like he belonged there. "Dr. Chen wants to keep you overnight for observation," Marcus said gently. "Make sure the poison is completely out of your system." "What about work tomorrow?" "The Henderson family meeting. Already rescheduled." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Your clients understand. Mrs. Rodriguez is bringing soup by the apartment, and Tommy's going to walk Duchess until you're home." Preston listened to this exchange, casual, domestic, filled with the kind of daily care he'd never learned to provide, and felt something die in his chest. These people loved Harper the way she deserved to be loved. Consistently, without conditions. "Harper," Preston said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." She looked at him with exhausted patience. "What? Is the baby mine?" The silence stretched like a held breath. Marcus shifted in his chair, but didn't let go of Harper's hand. Machines beeped steadily, counting heartbeats and possibilities. "Does it matter?" Harper asked finally. Of course it matters. Why? Her voice was sharp as broken glass. You planning to swoop in and play daddy now? Buy a nursery and hire a nanny and call it love? Preston flinched. I want to take responsibility. For what? For abandoning me when I needed you most? For choosing your mother's approval over your wife's happiness? For letting me believe I wasn't good enough for your precious family name? I was young. I was stupid. I didn't know how to fight them and keep you safe. So you chose not to fight at all. The truth sat between them like a third person in the room. Preston had been a coward 3 years ago, too afraid of losing his inheritance, too comfortable with his family's money and connections, too naive to understand that some battles were worth everything. I'm different now, he said. Are you? Harper's voice was deadly quiet. Because your mother is in the waiting room right now, probably planning how to spin this story to protect your reputation. Because you showed up here in a car that costs more than I make in 5 years. Because you still think money fixes everything. Harper, that's not. Get out. Her voice broke. Please, just get out. Marcus stood up, his presence suddenly protective and intimidating. You heard her. Preston looked between them. Harper small and vulnerable in the hospital bed, Marcus solid and unwavering beside her, and understood with devastating clarity that he was the outsider here. He was the threat to their peace, their carefully built life. When did you realize your family wasn't who you thought they were? How did you handle that betrayal? Share below. I'll find out who poisoned you, Preston said from the doorway. I'll make sure they can't hurt you again. Don't. Harper's voice was exhausted. Don't make this about you being the hero. You want to help? Stay away. Let me raise my child in peace. Preston walked back to the waiting room on unsteady legs. Victoria was still there, perfectly composed, scrolling through her phone like she was checking stock prices instead of waiting to see if her son's ex-wife would survive the night. How did she look? Victoria asked without looking up. Scared, angry, alive. Preston collapsed into a plastic chair that cost less than his tie. Mother, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Victoria's pale eyes met his with cold amusement. What? Did you try to have Harper killed? Victoria's laugh was like ice cubes clinking in expensive crystal. Oh, darling, you give me far too much credit for direct action. That's not a no. That's not a yes either. Victoria stood, smoothing her black dress. What I am is practical. Harper Davis is a problem that won't go away on its own. She's poor, she's pregnant, and she has a talent for making you forget who you really are. Who I really am is someone who loved her. Who you really are is a Whitmore. And Whitmores don't throw away empires for Brooklyn girls with pretty eyes and sad stories. Preston's phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. She's asking for you. Something's wrong. He ran back to Harper's room, Victoria's laughter following him down the hallway like a curse. Marcus burst into the hospital room, breathless and panicked. Harper, they've been watching your apartment for weeks. And Preston, his eyes met the billionaire's with naked hostility. Your people tried to break in last night. Money can buy silence, but it can't buy innocence. And the Whitmore family have been buying silence for decades. Harper's apartment building stood like a defiant middle finger to Greenwich society. Red brick worn smooth by decades of Newark weather, fire escapes decorated with laundry and children's bicycles, windows that opened onto real life instead of manicured lawns. Preston stared up at the third-floor window where Harper had built a life without him. Marcus stood beside his beat-up Honda, keys jangling with nervous energy. She's not coming with us, Marcus said for the 5th time. Harper doesn't want to see your family home. She doesn't want anything to do with your family. Someone tried to kill her. Preston's voice was raw from 3 hours of arguing with hospital administrators, insurance companies, and his own conscience. They're not going to stop because she survived one attempt. And you think bringing her to the place where all this started is going to help? Preston didn't have an answer for that. The Greenwich estate had been Harper's prison once. All marble floors and suffocating expectations. Family dinners where his mother dissected Harper's every word like a scientist studying bacteria. But it was also the most secure location he knew. 24-hour security, gates that kept the world out, rooms where Harper could rest without wondering if every meal might be her last. "My mother won't be there," Preston said, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. "She's staying at the Manhattan apartment until this blows over." Marcus snorted. "Your mother is the reason this is happening." The accusation hung between them like a loaded gun. Preston wanted to deny it, defend the woman who'd raised him, but the evidence was mounting like storm clouds. His phone rang. Dr. Chin's number. "Mr. Whitmore, we got a problem. Harper's blood pressure is spiking, and we're seeing signs of preeclampsia. We need to deliver the baby. Now." The world stopped. "How long?" Preston's voice came out strangled. "We're prepping for an emergency C-section. If you're coming, you need to get here immediately." Preston was already moving, Marcus beside him, both men forgetting their animosity in the face of real crisis. The Escalade tore through Newark streets like a black arrow, traffic parting before the urgency of two men racing toward the same goal. The hospital smelled like fear and antiseptic. Harper lay in pre-op, her face gray with pain, her hands clutching the thin hospital blanket like armor. "Where have you been?" she gasped when she saw them. They said the baby's in distress. That if we wait, we're here." Marcus took her left hand, Preston her right, and for one impossible moment, they were united in loving the same woman. "I'm scared," Harper whispered, and Preston's heart shattered because she was looking at Marcus when she said it. The surgical team wheeled her away, leaving the two men in a waiting room that felt smaller than a coffin. Preston paced like a caged wolf while Marcus sat statue still, his faith in God apparently stronger than Preston's faith in money or power or any of the things he'd thought mattered. "She might not make it," Marcus said quietly. "Don't say that. She might not, and if she doesn't, that baby is going to need someone who actually shows up. Someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard." Preston stopped pacing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Harper spent 3 years believing you didn't want her or the baby. 3 years building a life that didn't include you. If something happens to her, nothing's going to happen to her. But if it does..." Marcus's voice was steady as stone. "I've been there for every doctor's appointment, every midnight craving run, every time she cried because she missed you and hated herself for it. I've been the father this baby has known." The words cut deeper than any business rival's betrayal, deeper than any family disappointment. Because Marcus was right. While Preston had been building empires, Marcus had been building a family. "The baby might be mine," Preston said desperately. "DNA doesn't make you a father. Being there makes you a father." Preston's phone buzzed. His assistant. Emergency board meeting called. "Stop price dropping. Media everywhere. Your mother says it's urgent." The empire he'd spent 15 years building was crumbling, and he couldn't bring himself to care. Harper was fighting for her life 20 feet away, and nothing else mattered. "Mr. Whitmore?" Dr. Chin appeared in scrubs, her face unreadable. "We have good news and concerning news." Preston's legs nearly gave out. "The baby? Healthy. For pounds, 2 ounces. Small but strong. She's breathing on her own. She, a daughter." Preston felt something shift in his chest, something fundamental and permanent. "And Harper?" Dr. Chin hesitated. "She lost a lot of blood. We're monitoring her closely. The next few hours are critical." Marcus stood up slowly, like an old man despite being only 35. "Can we see the baby?" "Family only right now." Preston and Marcus looked at each other across 3 years of resentment and the weight of loving the same woman. "We're both family," Preston said quietly. The NICU felt like a spaceship, all white light and humming machines. In the center of it all, in a plastic incubator covered with blankets and wires, lay the smallest person Preston had ever seen. She had Harper's dark skin and delicate features, tiny fists waving at nothing, eyes squeezed shut against the world she'd been forced to enter too early. "Hi, baby girl," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with wonder. "Your mama's going to be okay. We're going to make sure you're both okay." Preston stared at this tiny miracle, 4 pounds of possibility and responsibility, and felt his entire worldview shift. This wasn't about DNA or legal rights or family legacy. This was about love, pure and simple. "What's her name?" he asked. "Harper wanted to wait," Marcus said. But she mentioned Aria, like the music. Aria. Preston reached through the incubator's opening and touched one tiny finger with his index finger. She gripped it immediately with surprising strength. In that moment, staring at this perfect little person who might or might not share his DNA, but definitely shared his heart, Preston made a decision that would change everything. He pulled out his phone and dialed his lawyer. "Richard, it's Preston. I need you to prepare papers transferring full custody of any children born to Harper Davis to her and her alone. No paternal rights, no claims, nothing." Marcus stared at him in shock. "And Richard, I need you to set up a trust fund, $50 million, for the baby's education, healthcare, whatever she needs. Harper controls it completely." "Preston, what are you doing?" Marcus asked. "What I should have done 3 years ago." Preston touched Aria's tiny hand again. "I'm choosing her happiness over my rights." His phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. "Don't answer it," Marcus said. Preston looked at his mother's name, then at the baby who'd already changed his entire understanding of what mattered in life. He declined to call. In the silence that followed, Aria opened her eyes for the first time, dark brown, just like her mother's, and Preston fell in love with someone who might never call him daddy. Have you ever realized someone else was being the parent you should have been? How'd that feel? Comments below. Down the hallway, Harper was waking up from surgery, asking for her baby and the man who'd chosen to stay instead of the man who'd chosen to leave. But in the NICU, watching Aria fight for every breath, Preston finally understood the difference between being a father and being a dad. 20 minutes later, Victoria Whitmore walked into the NICU like she owned it, her heels clicking against polished floors, a team of lawyers trailing behind her like well-dressed sharks. "Hello, darling," she said to Preston, not sparing a glance for Marcus or the baby. "We need to discuss the situation." "There's no situation, Mother. I'm handling this." Victoria's laugh was crystalline and cold. "Oh, sweetheart. You have no idea what situation you're in." She nodded to one of her lawyers, who stepped forward with official-looking documents. "Custody petition," the lawyer announced, "filed on behalf of Preston Whitmore, seeking full parental rights and custody of the minor child born to Harper Davis. Grounds include abandonment, endangerment, and unfit living conditions." Preston felt the blood drain from his face. "I didn't authorize this." "You didn't need to," Victoria smiled. "I'm acting in the best interests of my potential granddaughter. If Harper can't prove paternity, she can't prove you don't have rights. And if she can't afford proper legal representation, you're insane." Marcus stepped forward, but hospital security moved to block him. "This baby has been in the world for 2 hours, and you're already trying to steal her." "I'm trying to save her," Victoria said calmly. "From a life of poverty and instability. From a mother who puts herself in danger and attracts violence. From a world where children grow up without proper advantages." Preston stared at his mother, really looked at her for the first time in years. The perfectly styled hair, the designer clothes, the smile that never reached her eyes. She wasn't trying to protect anyone. She was trying to control everyone. "Withdraw the petition," he said quietly. "Preston, withdraw it. Now, or I'll make sure every reporter in New York knows exactly how the Whitmore family treats the women their sons love." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something sharp and desperate underneath. "You think I'm the villain here? I'm protecting our family legacy. That woman has been nothing but trouble since the day you met her. That woman," Preston said, his voice rising, "is fighting for her life down the hall while you're trying to steal her child." The NICU fell silent except for the steady beeping of machines, keeping tiny lives stable. Even the lawyers looked uncomfortable. Victoria studied her son's face, reading something there that made her step back. "Fine," she said finally. "Withdraw the petition. For now. But Preston." Her voice dropped to a whisper that felt like a threat. "This isn't over. That baby is a Whitmore, whether Harper wants to admit it or not. And Whitmores take care of their own." She swept out of the NICU as dramatically as she'd entered, leaving Preston and Marcus alone with Aria and the weight of what had just happened. "Your family is terrifying," Marcus said quietly. "I know." Preston looked down at Aria, still gripping his finger with surprising strength. But they're not her family. Not if I have anything to say about it. His phone buzzed one more time. The unknown number. The papers were just a warning shot. Tell Preston his mother isn't done playing games. And next time, Harper might not be so lucky. 20 minutes later, Victoria Whitmore walked into the NICU like she owned it, her heels clicking against polished floors, a team of lawyers trailing behind her like well-dressed sharks. "Hello, darling," she said to Preston, not sparing a glance for Marcus or the baby. "We need to discuss the situation." "There's no situation, Mother. I'm handling this." Victoria's laugh was crystalline and cold. "Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea what situation you're in." She nodded to one of her lawyers, who stepped forward with official-looking documents. "Custody petition," the lawyer announced, "filed on behalf of Preston Whitmore, seeking full parental rights and custody of the minor child born to Harper Davis. Grounds include abandonment, endangerment, and unfit living conditions." Preston felt the blood drain from his face. "I didn't authorize this." "You didn't need to," Victoria smiled. "I'm acting in the best interests of my potential granddaughter. If Harper can't prove paternity, she can't prove you don't have rights. And if she can't afford proper legal representation." "You're insane." Marcus stepped forward, but hospital security moved to block him. "This baby has been in the world for 2 hours, and you're already trying to steal her." "I'm trying to save her," Victoria said calmly. "From a life of poverty and instability. From a mother who puts herself in danger and attracts violence. From a world where children grow up without proper advantages." Preston stared at his mother, really looked at her for the first time in years. The perfectly styled hair, the designer clothes, the smile that never reached her eyes. She wasn't trying to protect anyone. She was trying to control everyone. "Withdraw the petition," he said quietly. "Preston, withdraw it. Now, or I'll make sure every reporter in New York knows exactly how the Whitmore family treats the women their sons love." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something sharp and desperate underneath. "You think I'm the villain here? I'm protecting our family legacy. That woman has been nothing but trouble since the day you met her. That woman," Preston said, his voice rising, "is fighting for her life down the hall while you're trying to steal her child." The NICU fell silent, except for the steady beeping of machines, keeping tiny lives stable. Even the lawyers looked uncomfortable. Victoria studied her son's face, reading something there that made her step back. "Fine," she said finally. "Withdraw the petition. For now." "But Preston," her voice dropped to a whisper that felt like a threat. "This isn't over. That baby is a Whitmore, whether Harper wants to admit it or not. And Whitmores take care of their own." She swept out of the NICU as dramatically as she'd entered, leaving Preston and Marcus alone with Arya and the weight of what had just happened. "Your family is terrifying," Marcus said quietly. "I know." Preston looked down at Arya, still gripping his finger with surprising strength. "But they're not her family. Not if I have anything to say about it." His phone buzzed one more time. The unknown number. The papers were just a warning shot. Tell Preston his mother isn't done playing games. And next time, Harper might not be so lucky. The DNA test results arrived on a Tuesday morning, sealed in an envelope that could change 3 lives forever. But some truths are more dangerous than lies. Harper sat in her hospital bed, Arya sleeping in her arms, when Preston knocked on the door. 5 days had passed since the emergency surgery, 5 days of awkward visits and careful conversations, 5 days of dancing around the question that hung over them like a storm cloud. "How are you feeling?" Preston asked, settling into the chair Marcus had claimed as his own. "Like I got hit by a truck." Harper's voice was hoarse from exhaustion. "But she's perfect. Look at her." Arya had grown stronger each day, her tiny fingers gripping blankets, her dark eyes tracking movement around the room. She was alert and curious, studying faces like she was memorizing everyone who mattered. "The discharge papers are ready," Preston said carefully. "Dr. Chun says you can go home tomorrow." "Home?" Harper's laugh was bitter. "To my 1-bedroom apartment above a convenience store, with death threats in my mailbox and your mother's lawyers watching my every move." Preston pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Official letterhead, sealed edges, the weight of destiny in his hands. The DNA results came back. The room went silent except for the soft sounds of Arya breathing. Harper's arms tightened around her daughter, protective and fierce. "I don't want to know," she said quietly. "Harper, I don't want to know because it doesn't matter." Her eyes blazed with tired determination. "This baby is mine. I carried her for 8 months. I fought for her life. I'm the one who's going to raise her and love her and protect her from her toxic family. But if she's mine, if she's yours, what? You'll suddenly become Father of the Year? You'll show up for piano recitals and school plays? You'll teach her how to ride a bike and scare away boys and hold her when she cries." Each question hit Preston like a physical blow because they both knew the answer. His own father had been absent, emotionally distant, more interested in stock prices than bedtime stories. The Whitmore men weren't built for nurturing. "I want to try," he said softly. "Try isn't good enough for her." Harper kissed Arya's forehead, breathing in that sweet baby smell. She deserves someone who shows up every day, not just when it's convenient. Preston stared at the envelope in his hands. Inside were scientific facts, percentages, and probabilities that could grant him legal rights or free him from responsibility. But Harper was right. Being a father wasn't about DNA. "Marcus has been here every day," Harper continued. "He helped me paint the nursery pink when we found out she was a girl. He assembled the crib and bought tiny clothes and read pregnancy books cover to cover. He's been her father since before she was born. Where is he now? At my apartment, baby-proofing everything and installing new locks." Harper's voice softened with gratitude, making sure we have somewhere safe to come home to. Preston felt a stab of jealousy, so sharp it took his breath away. Marcus was everything Preston should have been: present, reliable, selfless. While Preston had been playing corporate games, Marcus had been building a family. "Open it," Harper said suddenly. "What?" "The envelope. Open it." Her voice was steady, resolved. "Let's end this mystery once and for all." Preston's hand shook as he tore open the envelope. The pages inside were clinical, official, covered in numbers and charts that reduced human connection to mathematical probability. He read the results twice, then looked up at Harper with an expression she couldn't read. "Well," she asked, "she's not mine." The words came out hollow, empty of the relief or disappointment he'd expected to feel. "According to this, there's zero probability that I'm Arya's biological father." Harper closed her eyes, and Preston saw something that looked like relief wash over her face. Not because she didn't want him in Arya's life, but because she'd been terrified he'd try to take her daughter away. "So that's it then," she said quietly. "You're free to go back to your empire. No obligaciones, no más emociones, no. I want to be in her life anyway." The words surprised them both. Preston hadn't planned to say them, hadn't even known he was thinking them until they fell from his lips. "Preston, I know I don't have any legal rights. I know Marcus is going to be her father in every way that matters. But Harper," he looked at Arya, sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. "I held her when she was 2 hours old. I watched her fight for every breath. I've never felt anything like that before." Harper studied his face, searching for deception or manipulation. But Preston's expression was raw, honest, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to be Uncle Preston, if you'll let me. I want to help pay for her college and buy her ridiculously expensive birthday presents and threaten boys who break her heart. I want to be someone she can count on. Have you ever loved someone who wasn't related to you by blood? Someone who became family through choice instead of genetics? Share your story below." A knock on the door interrupted them. Marcus entered with coffee and the kind of exhausted smile that came from 3 days of running on adrenaline and hope. "How are my girls?" he asked, kissing Harper's forehead and gently stroking Arya's cheek. "Perfect," Harper said, and Preston heard the love in her voice. Warm, complete, nothing like the careful affection she'd once shown him. "The apartment's ready," Marcus continued. "New locks, security cameras, baby gates, even though she won't need them for years. Your neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, insisted on stocking the refrigerator." "Marcus," Harper said gently. Preston got the DNA results. Marcus went very still. And she's not his, Harper said, watching Marcus's face carefully. The relief that flooded Marcus's expression was immediate and overwhelming. His shoulders sagged, his breathing deepened, and for the first time in 5 days, he looked like he might actually sleep. "So we can go home," Marcus said. "All of us, together." Preston watched this exchange. Intimate, domestic, full of shared fear and relief, and understood with devastating clarity that he was witnessing a family. Not the kind built on DNA or legal documents, but the kind built on choice and presence and daily acts of love. "There's something else," Preston said. "My mother. She's not going to stop." The custody petition was just the beginning. Marcus's expression hardened. "What do you mean?" "She still thinks Arya is mine. Even if the DNA test proves otherwise, she won't believe it. She'll claim the results were tampered with, that Harper somehow switched samples. She's convinced Arya is a Whitmore, and she'll do whatever it takes to control the situation." "Can she do that?" Harper asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Can she challenge the test results? With enough lawyers and money, she can challenge anything." Preston's voice was grim. "And even if she can't win custody, she can make your life hell trying." Harper looked down at Arya, sleeping peacefully in her arms, oblivious to the storm gathering around her tiny life. "So what do we do?" Preston stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked Newark's busy streets. Down below, real people lived real lives, working jobs that mattered, raising children with love instead of obligation, building communities based on trust instead of transactions. "You disappear," he said quietly. "What?" Marcus and Harper spoke in unison. "You take Arya and you disappear. New identities, new city, somewhere my mother can't find you. I'll provide the resources, clean papers, enough money to start over, a place to live where you can raise her in peace." "Preston, that's crazy," Harper said. "We can't just vanish. I have a job here, clients who depend on me. Marcus has his practice. We have a life that's in danger." Preston turned back to them, his face etched with guilt and determination. "My mother tried to kill you once. She'll try again. And next time, she might succeed." Marcus stood up, crossing to Preston with measured steps. "Why would you help us disappear? If Arya is not your daughter, why do you care what happens to us?" Preston looked at Marcus, this good man who'd stepped into the space Preston had abandoned, who'd loved Harper and Arya without conditions or expectations, and felt something shift in his chest. "Because I love her," Preston said simply. "Not the way you do, not the way a father loves a daughter. But I love her enough to want her safe, even if that means never seeing her again." The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of monitors and the soft sounds of afternoon traffic below. "I have another idea," Harper said finally. "What if instead of running away, we make your mother face the truth publicly?" Preston and Marcus stared at her. "What do you mean?" Preston asked. "I mean, what if we tell our story? The real story. About how Victoria Whitmore tried to destroy her son's marriage. How she's been terrorizing an innocent woman for 3 years. How she tried to steal a baby that isn't even related to her family." "Harper, that's dangerous," Marcus said. "Going public with the Whitmores? They'll destroy you. They're already trying to destroy me." Harper's voice grew stronger with each word. "At least this way, I'm fighting back instead of running away." Preston felt something that might have been pride or terror or both. Harper had always been brave. It was one of the things that had drawn him to her. But this wasn't just brave. This was war. "If you do this," he said slowly, "there's no going back. My mother won't just try to discredit you. She'll come after everyone you care about. Your family, your friends. Marcus, let her try," Marcus said quietly, moving to stand beside Harper. "I'm not afraid of your mother." Preston looked at them. Harper holding their daughter, Marcus standing guard, both of them ready to fight for their family, and made a decision that would change everything. "Okay," he said, "let's burn it all down." The next morning, Harper's phone rang at 6 a.m. An unknown number, but she recognized the voice immediately. Cold, cultured, absolutely furious. "You have 24 hours to reconsider," Victoria Whitmore said without preamble. "After that, I stopped playing nice. Some battles are fought in courtrooms. Others are fought in the court of public opinion. And some are fought in the dark corners where rich families bury their sins. The New York Times journalist looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Sandra Kim sat across from Harper and Marcus in the hospital cafeteria, her recorder between them like a judge waiting to hear testimony, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes sharp with professional interest. "Let me make sure I understand," Sandra said, consulting her notes. "You're alleging that Victoria Whitmore has been systematically harassing you for 3 years, including attempts on your life?" "Not alleging, stating." Harper's voice was steady despite the exhaustion that pulled at her bones. "I have documentation, police reports, hospital records, insurance claims for the car accident that wasn't an accident." Preston sat at a nearby table, close enough to hear, but far enough away to give Harper space to tell her story without his presence influencing the narrative. He'd been the one to reach out to Sandra. They'd known each other since college, and she was one of the few journalists in New York who wasn't afraid of the Whitmore family's influence. "And you believe these incidents are connected to your marriage to Preston Whitmore?" "I know they are." Harper shifted Aria in her arms, the baby content to sleep through what might be the most important conversation of her young life. "Victoria Whitmore told me herself. At a charity gala 3 years ago, right before I left Preston. She said I was embarrassing the family, that I didn't belong in their world, and that she'd make sure I knew it." Sandra scribbled notes, her pen moving fast across the page. "Do you have witnesses to this conversation?" "About 50 members of Greenwich Society," Marcus said dryly, "though I doubt any of them would testify against Victoria Whitmore." "What about the recent poisoning incident?" Harper and Marcus exchanged a look. This was the part that still felt like a nightmare, too horrific to be real. "Ricin," Harper said simply. "Introduced through the coffee I had that morning. If I hadn't collapsed when I did, if Preston hadn't insisted on bringing me to the hospital immediately, you would have died," Sandra finished. "Along with your baby, along with my baby." Sandra studied Harper's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. Harper met her gaze steadily, unafraid of scrutiny. The truth was brutal, but it was also simple. Why come forward now? Why not 3 years ago when this allegedly started? "Because 3 years ago, I was alone and scared, and I believed running away would solve the problem." Harper's voice grew stronger. "Now I have a daughter to protect, and I've learned that running from bullies just gives them more power. Also," Marcus added, "because Victoria Whitmore filed a custody petition for a baby that isn't even related to her family. That's not harassment. That's delusion." Sandra's eyebrows shot up. "Custody petition?" Preston stood up from his table and walked over, his presence immediately shifting the energy in the room. Even tired and rumpled from days at the hospital, he commanded attention. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside Harper. Sandra nodded, her recorder still running. "My mother filed emergency custody papers claiming I was the father of Harper's baby," Preston said without preamble. "She did this without my knowledge or consent, based purely on her assumption that any baby Harper had must be mine." "And is it your baby?" Preston pulled out the DNA test results, still folded in his jacket pocket. "According to medical science, no. 0 probability of paternity. But your mother doesn't believe the results?" "My mother doesn't believe anything that contradicts what she wants to be true." Preston's voice carried years of exhaustion. "She's convinced Harper is manipulating me, that the baby is part of some elaborate scheme to get back into the Whitmore family." "Is it?" Sandra asked Harper directly. "Are you trying to reconcile with your ex-husband?" Harper's laugh was sharp and humorless. "I've spent 3 years building a life that doesn't include Preston. I have a career helping families in crisis, a partner who loves me unconditionally, and a daughter who will never have to wonder if she's good enough for her father's family. Why would I want to go back to that world?" The words hit Preston like physical blows, but he didn't flinch. Harper was right. She'd built something beautiful without him, something authentic and meaningful. He'd been the one clinging to the past. "So what do you want?" Sandra asked. "Justice? Revenge? Money. I want my daughter to grow up safe," Harper said simply. "I want to be able to walk down the street without wondering if someone's following me. I want to eat food without testing it for poison first. I want Victoria Whitmore to understand that she can't terrorize people just because they inconvenience her. Sandra closed her notebook and turned off the recorder. This is a hell of a story, but you understand what you're up against? The Whitmores have lawyers, politicians, media connections. They can make your life very difficult. More difficult than attempted murder? Marcus asked. Different kind of difficult. Public difficult. They'll dig up everything. Your family history, your finances, your relationship with Preston, your relationship with Marcus. They'll try to paint you as unstable, vindictive, opportunistic. Let them try, Harper said. I've got nothing to hide. Preston's phone buzzed. His assistant. Emergency. Your mother called board meeting. Stop price dropping. Media's starting to ask questions. The empire he'd built was already feeling the tremors of what was coming. But for the first time in his life, Preston found himself not caring about stock prices or board meetings or family legacy. When will the story run? He asked Sandra. Front page, Sunday edition. That gives you about 48 hours to prepare for the storm. They shook hands, and Sandra gathered her things, already composing the article that would change everything. Harper, she said before leaving, are you sure about this? Once this story breaks, there's no going back to anonymity. Harper looked down at Arya, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos swirling around her tiny life. My daughter deserves to grow up in the light, not in the shadows of someone else's secrets. After Sandra left, the three of them sat in silence, processing what they just said in motion. She's going to come after us hard, Preston said quietly. My mother doesn't just lose. She destroys anyone who makes her lose. What's the worst she can do? Marcus asked. Preston's phone rang before he could answer. Victoria's name on the screen, the third call in 10 minutes that he'd ignored. This time he answered, Mother, you stupid, ungrateful boy. Victoria's voice was ice-cold fury. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've told the truth. You've destroyed our family, our reputation, everything your grandfather and I built. You destroyed our family when you tried to kill Harper. The line went silent for so long Preston thought she'd hung up. Meet me at the Greenwich house, Victoria said finally. 1 hour. Come alone. Mother. 1 hour, Preston. Or I'll make sure Harper and her bastard baby disappear permanently. The line went dead. Preston stared at his phone, his hands shaking with rage and fear. Victoria had just threatened Harper and Arya directly, openly, without any pretense of deniability. What did she say? Harper asked, reading his expression. She wants to meet. At the Greenwich house. It's a trap, Marcus said immediately. You can't go. I have to. If I don't. Preston looked at Harper and Arya, then at Marcus. She threatened you. All of you. Directly. Harper shifted Arya to one arm and reached for Preston's hand with the other. The touch was electric, familiar. 3 years of separation vanishing in an instant. We're in this together now, she said. All of us. Whatever happens next, we face it as a family. Preston looked down at their joined hands. Harper's dark fingers intertwined with his pale ones. Marcus's hand covering both of theirs in a gesture of solidarity that would have been impossible a week ago. What if she's recording the conversation? Harper asked. What if we could get her to admit what she's done? Preston's phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number that had been threatening them all week. Your mother isn't the only one with secrets. Meet us at the old warehouse on Pier 47. Come alone, where the baby pays the price. Have you ever had to choose between your birth family and the family you chose? When blood relationships became toxic? Tell us in the comments. Change of plans, Preston said, showing them the text. We're not just fighting my mother anymore. Outside the hospital window, a black sedan had been parked across the street for 3 hours, its occupants watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The war for Arya's future was about to begin. Every family has secrets. Some are buried in old photo albums. Others are buried in abandoned warehouses where the wealthy come to clean up their mistakes. Pier 47 sat on the Hudson River like a graveyard of New York's industrial past. Crumbling concrete, rusted metal, broken windows that reflected the city's lights like dead eyes. Preston's Escalade looked obscenely out of place among the decay, a monument to wealth in a place where wealth came to die. He sat in the driver's seat, engine running, watching the warehouse where someone, maybe his mother, maybe her hired help, maybe someone else entirely, was waiting to end this once and for all. His phone buzzed. "Marcus, we're in position. Harper and Arya are safe. You sure about this?" Preston typed back, "No, but it's the only way." The recording device Harper had taped to his chest felt like a second heartbeat. Small, digital, completely illegal if used without consent. But they were past worrying about legal niceties. Victoria had threatened an innocent baby. All bets were off. The warehouse door stood open, a mouth of darkness waiting to swallow him whole. Preston checked his phone one more time. The live stream to Marcus and Harper was working, the GPS tracker active. If something happened to him, at least they'd know where to find his body. Inside, the warehouse smelled like rust and decades of forgotten business deals. His footsteps echoed off concrete walls, each sound amplifying his isolation. Emergency lighting cast sickly yellow pools on the floor, creating islands of visibility in an ocean of shadows. "Hello, Preston." He turned toward the voice, his heart hammering against his ribs. Victoria emerged from the darkness like a perfectly dressed ghost, her heels clicking against concrete with the rhythm of a funeral march. But she wasn't alone. 3 men in expensive suits flanked her. Not bodyguards, Preston realized, but lawyers. Behind them, partially hidden in shadow, stood 2 figures that made Preston's blood run cold. Dr. Williams, Harper's former obstetrician from Greenwich Hospital. The man who delivered their first pregnancy. The one Harper had lost at 12 weeks, the miscarriage that had started the crack in their marriage. And beside him, Detective Ray Morrison from the Newark Police Department. The same Detective Morrison who'd been investigating the attempts on Harper's life with suspicious lack of progress. Surprised? Victoria's smile was sharp as broken glass. "You shouldn't be. Did you really think you could destroy our family without consequences?" Preston found his voice. "What is this?" "This," Victoria gestured to the assembled group, "is cleanup. The kind of cleanup that happens when families need to protect themselves from threats. Harper isn't a threat. She's the mother of an innocent baby. Harper Davis is a manipulative whore who's been bleeding our family dry for 3 years." Victoria's mask of civility slipped, revealing the venom beneath. "And that baby is her insurance policy. The DNA test. The DNA test you showed that reporter? The one conveniently proving you're not the father." Victoria laughed, cold and sharp. "Dr. Williams, would you like to explain to my son how DNA tests can be adjusted?" Dr. Williams stepped forward, his face uncomfortable, but his voice steady. "DNA results can be altered before they reach the official report. Simple computer work, really. Change a few numbers, adjust some percentages." Preston felt the world tilt sideways. "You're saying the test was fake?" "I'm saying the test showed exactly what your mother wanted it to show," Dr. Williams said. "Whether that matches biological reality, well, that's a different question." The recording device against Preston's chest felt like it was burning through his skin. Every word was being captured, broadcast live to Harper and Marcus, documented for the story that would destroy his family's reputation forever. "So Arya is my daughter?" "Arya is leverage," Victoria said coldly. "Whether she's biologically yours doesn't matter. What matters is that Harper believes you're not the father, which makes her vulnerable. Unprotected, easy to eliminate." "Eliminate?" Preston's voice came out strangled. "You're talking about murdering the mother of my child. I'm talking about protecting our family legacy." Victoria began pacing, her heels marking time like a countdown. "Harper Davis has caused nothing but problems since the day you met her. She's cost us money, reputation, stability. And now she's spreading lies to reporters, trying to destroy everything we've built. They're not lies if they're true. Truth is whatever we decide it is, darling. We have the money to make truth." Detective Morrison stepped forward, his badge catching the warehouse light. "Ms. Davis has been under investigation for insurance fraud, extortion, and child endangerment. When she dies, and she will die, in what will appear to be a tragic accident. That baby will need a stable home, with family who can provide proper care, Victoria added. The Whitmores take care of their own. Preston stared at these people, his mother, a doctor, a police detective, calmly discussing the murder of a woman and the kidnapping of her child. The casual evil of it made his stomach turn. You're all insane. We're practical, Victoria corrected. Harper dies in a car accident. Marcus dies trying to save her. Very heroic, very tragic. The baby survives and comes home to Greenwich, where she belongs. End of story. You think you could just kill them? In broad daylight. We think we can arrange accidents that look convincing to the media and the courts. Detective Morrison's voice was businesslike, professional. Harper's already survived multiple accidents. Her luck was bound to run out eventually. Preston's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Police surrounding warehouse. Harper and baby safe. Keep them talking. The cavalry was coming. But Preston realized with crystal clarity that it might not matter. Victoria had planned this too carefully, bought too many people, covered too many angles. What about me? Preston asked. You think I'll just go along with this? Pretend I don't know what you've done. You'll grieve appropriately, Victoria said matter-of-factly. You'll raise your daughter with proper values. You'll continue running the company and building the family legacy. And in a few years, you'll marry someone suitable and give Arya a proper stepmother. Someone you choose. Someone who understands her place in our world. Preston pulled out his phone, still recording, still streaming everything live to the outside world. And if I refuse? Victoria's smile turned genuinely warm for the first time, which made it infinitely more terrifying. Oh, sweetheart, you won't refuse. Because if you do, I'll make sure that baby disappears completely. Not just dead, gone, like she never existed. The warehouse suddenly filled with light, police spotlights blazing through broken windows, car doors slamming, voices shouting commands. NYPD, nobody move. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Calculation, not fear. How unfortunate, she said calmly. Though, I suppose this just accelerates our timeline. Dr. Williams was already moving toward a back exit, but Detective Morrison stood his ground, hand moving toward his weapon. Ray, Victoria said softly, remember what we discussed? About your daughter's medical bills. About your wife's legal troubles. Morrison's hand froze on his gun. Even dirty cops had families to protect. It's over, Mother, Preston said, backing toward the police lights. Everything you just said was recorded. The whole world is going to know what kind of monster you really are. The world already knows what kind of monster I am, Victoria replied. They just call it good business. The police swept into the warehouse like a tide, surrounding Victoria and her conspirators with professional efficiency. But Victoria Whitmore stood perfectly still, her hands at her sides, her expression calm as a church service. You think this changes anything? She called to Preston as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. You think exposing me protects her? You have no idea what you've just unleashed. As they led her away, Victoria's voice echoed off the warehouse walls. This isn't over, Preston. It's just beginning. Outside, Harper waited in an unmarked police car. Arya sleeping in her arms, both of them safe and alive despite everything Victoria had planned. But as Preston watched his mother disappear into the back of a police van, he realized Victoria was right about one thing. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, every major newspaper in America carried the same headline. Billionaire's mother arrested in murder plot. The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it burns down everything you thought you knew about your life. Preston stood in his Manhattan office, watching his empire crumble in real time. The stock ticker on his wall showed Whitmore Industries down 40% and falling. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since 6 a.m. Reporters, board members, investors, all demanding explanations he couldn't give. Through his floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see protesters gathering in the street below. Signs reading "Justice for Harper" and "Arrest all Whitmores" bobbed like angry flags in the morning sun. Sir, his assistant Rebecca peered around the door, her face pale with stress. The board is here for the emergency meeting. They are not happy. Preston nodded, straightening his tie out of habit. 3 days ago, he'd been one of the most powerful men in New York. Today, he was the son of an accused murderer, and that changed everything. The boardroom felt like a courtroom. 12 men and women in expensive suits sat around the polished table, their expressions ranging from concern to hostile. These people had made billions following his leadership. Now, they looked at him like he was toxic waste. Preston, Charles Morrison, no relation to the dirty detective, spoke first. His voice carried the careful neutrality of someone delivering bad news. "We need to discuss your position with the company." "My position is CEO and majority shareholder," Preston said calmly. "That hasn't changed. Your mother's arrest changes everything." Margaret Chun, the board's lone woman, interjected. "The media coverage is destroying our stock price. Clients are canceling contracts. Our reputation is in freefall." Preston had expected this. When you built an empire on family reputation, family scandals became business disasters. "Victoria's actions don't reflect company policy or values," he said. "She hasn't been involved in day-to-day operations for over 5 years." "The public doesn't care about operational details," Charles said. "They see the Whitmore name and think conspiracy, corruption, attempted murder. That's not a brand we can sell. So what are you proposing?" The board members exchanged glances, the kind of looks that meant decisions had already been made behind closed doors. "Temporary leave of absence," Margaret said, "until this situation resolves itself." Charles would serve as interim CEO. Preston felt something cold settle in his chest. "And if I refuse? Then we call a vote of no confidence," Charles said matter-of-factly. "With the stock price in freefall and half our major clients reconsidering their contracts, I don't think that vote would go your way." The empire Preston had spent 15 years building was being taken from him by people he'd trusted, colleagues he'd considered friends. But as he looked around the table at their carefully neutral faces, he realized something profound. He didn't care as much as he should. 3 weeks ago, losing Whitmore Industries would have felt like death. Today, all he could think about was Arya gripping his finger in the NICU, Harper's brave decision to go public, Marcus standing guard over the family Preston had abandoned. "Fine," he said quietly. "I'll take the leave of absence." Relief flickered across several faces. They'd expected a fight, legal challenges, the kind of corporate warfare Preston was famous for. However, Preston continued, "I want something in return." Charles raised an eyebrow. "You're not exactly in a position to make demands. I want the company to establish a foundation. $50 million to start, focused on supporting single mothers and protecting families from domestic violence. Harper Davis will oversee the program." The boardroom went silent. Margaret Chin looked like she might choke on her coffee. "You want to give $50 million to the woman who destroyed our company?" Charles asked. "I want to give $50 million to the woman my mother tried to murder," Preston corrected. "The woman who spent 3 years helping families while we've spent 3 years making rich people richer." "Preston, that's my condition. The foundation gets established and fully funded, or I fight the no confidence vote with every resource I have. And trust me, even damaged, I still have enough resources to make your lives very difficult." Another exchange of glances around the table. Finally, Charles nodded. "The foundation gets established." Preston stood up, suddenly exhausted. "Then we have a deal." As he walked toward the door, Margaret called after him. "Preston, what are you going to do now?" He turned back to look at the people who'd just voted him out of his own company. "I'm going to learn how to be the man I should have been 3 years ago." The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like descending from heaven to earth. 40 floors of falling, leaving behind the rarefied air of extreme wealth for the Messier reality of ground level. In the lobby, reporters swarmed like sharks sensing blood. Camera flashes exploded. Microphones thrust toward his face, voices shouting questions over each other. "Mr. Whitmore, did you know about your mother's plans? Are you the father of Harper Davis's baby? Will you be stepping down as CEO?" Preston pushed through the crowd without answering, his security team clearing a path to the waiting car. But just before he reached the exit, one question stopped him cold. "Mr. Whitmore, is it true you're planning to marry Harper Davis?" He turned toward the voice, a young reporter with hungry eyes and a recorder held high. "No comment," Preston said. But as his car pulled away from the chaos, the question echoed in his mind. Marriage. The one solution he hadn't considered. The one way to legally protect Harper and Arya from whatever Victoria's allies might try next. His phone buzzed. A text from Harper saw the news. "Are you okay?" He stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Better than I've been in years. Can we talk?" Her response came immediately. "Come to the apartment. Marcus is making dinner." 20 minutes later, Preston stood outside Harper's building in Newark, looking up at the fire escape where children played and neighbors hung laundry. His Escalade looked ridiculous on this street, a monument to wealth in a neighborhood where wealth was measured in small kindnesses and daily survival. Harper opened the door before he could knock, Arya sleeping in her arms, her face soft with concern. "You look terrible," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "Thanks." Always knew how to make a man feel good about himself. Despite everything, Harper smiled. "Come on." Marcus made enough food for an army. The apartment was tiny but warm. Mismatched furniture, photographs on every surface, the smell of something delicious coming from the kitchen. It felt more like home than Preston's penthouse ever had. Marcus emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the cook," his face wary but not hostile. "Heard about the board meeting," Marcus said. "That had to hurt." Actually, it was kind of liberating. Preston settled onto the small couch, careful not to disturb Arya as Harper sat beside him. Turns out losing everything makes you realize what actually matters. "What matters?" Harper asked softly. Preston looked around the small apartment, at the photos of Harper's family, at Marcus's medical textbooks stacked on the coffee table, at Arya's tiny bassinet in the corner, surrounded by stuffed animals and hand-knitted blankets. "This," he said simply, "this matters. Family matters. Love matters. The rest is just noise." Have you ever lost something you thought was everything, only to discover it wasn't? When did you realize what actually mattered in your life? Share below. Over dinner, Marcus's homemade lasagna, which was better than anything Preston had ever eaten at five-star restaurants. They talked about the future. Victoria's trial would take months, maybe years. The media attention would eventually fade, but the damage to all their lives was permanent. "What will you do now?" Marcus asked as they cleared dishes. "I don't know," Preston admitted. "For the first time in my adult life, I have no plan. No empire to build, no deals to close, no competitions to win." "That sounds terrifying," Harper said. "It sounds wonderful." Later, after Marcus had gone to his own apartment across the hall, Preston and Harper sat on the couch, talking while Arya slept between them. "I have a proposition," Preston said carefully. Harper raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "Marry me." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Harper stared at him, her expression unreadable. "Preston, not for love, not for romance, for protection." He leaned forward, his voice urgent. "Victoria has allies, people who owe her favors. Even in prison, she can reach out and hurt you. But if you're my wife again, legally, you're protected by the Whitmore name. You and Arya both. That's the worst marriage proposal in history," Harper said, but her voice was gentle. "I know, but it's practical. And it would give Arya legal protection, financial security, access to the best schools and healthcare. Everything she deserves." Harper looked down at her sleeping daughter, then back at Preston. "What about Marcus? What about the life we've built here?" "Marcus would still be her father in every way that matters. I'd be the legal guardian who makes sure she's safe. We could figure out the details as we go. You're talking about a marriage of convenience. I'm talking about a family of choice." Harper was quiet for a long moment, her fingers gently stroking Arya's soft hair. "What would you get out of it?" she asked finally. Preston considered the question seriously. What would he get? The chance to watch Arya grow up, to be present for milestones he'd missed with his own childhood. The opportunity to protect the woman he'd failed 3 years ago. The possibility of building something real instead of just profitable. "I'd get to be the man I should have been the first time," he said quietly. Harper studied his face in the soft light of her living room, searching for deception or manipulation. But Preston's expression was open, honest, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course. Take all the time you need." As Preston prepared to leave, Harper caught his arm. "Preston, thank you. For everything. For believing me, for protecting us, for..." She gestured around the small apartment. "For letting us be a family, even if it's not the family you expected." Preston looked down at Arya, still sleeping peacefully despite the chaos swirling around her tiny life. "She's perfect," he said softly. "You both are." Outside, the black sedan that had been watching Harper's building for weeks was gone. But Preston knew it would be back. Victoria's reach was long, her memory longer, and prison bars wouldn't stop her from trying to control the lives of everyone she considered her property. The war for Arya's future was far from over. But for the first time since this all began, Preston felt like they might actually win. His phone buzzed as he reached his car. An unknown number, but the message made his blood run cold. "Your mother sends her regards. The baby looks so peaceful when she sleeps. It would be a shame if something happened to disturb that peace." Some protectors wear badges. Others wear Armani suits and carry secrets that could topple governments. And sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody sees coming. The message came at 3 a.m., when the city sleeps and only predators and protectors prowl the streets. Preston's phone buzzed once, a single text that changed everything. Package delivered. Problem solved. No questions. A friend. Preston sat up in his penthouse bed, staring at the screen. He'd been getting death threats for days. Anonymous calls, untraceable emails. Messages promising that Harper and Arya would pay for destroying the Whitmore family legacy. But this message was different. This felt like an answer. His phone rang immediately. Harper's number, her voice shaking with fear and confusion. "Preston, something happened. The police are here, and they're saying..." Her voice broke. "They're saying someone's dead." Preston was already moving, throwing on clothes, grabbing his keys. "I'm coming. Don't talk to anyone until I get there." The drive to Newark had never felt longer. Red lights that lasted forever. Empty streets that stretched like obstacles. The knowledge that something fundamental had shifted in the night while he slept in his ivory tower. Harper Street buzzed with activity. Police cars, an ambulance, neighbors in bathrobes and pajamas clustering on sidewalks, their faces lit by the strobing red and blue lights. Crime scene tape blocked off the entrance to the building across from Harper's, and Preston's heart nearly stopped when he realized what that meant. The watchers had been watched. Detective Sarah Martinez met him at the police perimeter, her expression grim but not unsympathetic. Preston had never seen her before, but she knew exactly who he was. "Mr. Whitmore? I'm Detective Martinez. We need to talk. Is Harper okay? The baby? They're fine. Shaken up, but fine." Martinez gestured toward Harper's building. The problem was in the apartment across the street. 3rd floor, directly facing Ms. Davis's living room. Preston's stomach clenched. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves high-powered surveillance equipment, detailed floor plans of Ms. Davis's apartment, and 2 men with extensive criminal records who won't be bothering anyone anymore." The words hit Preston like ice water. "They're dead. Very dead. Professional job. Quick, clean, no witnesses. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." Martinez studied Preston's face carefully. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm talking about justice, Mr. Whitmore. The kind that happens when the legal system moves too slowly for some people's taste." Martinez pulled out a small recording device. "Before they died, one of our surveillance subjects made some interesting phone calls. Want to hear?" She pressed play. A gravelly voice filled the air, speaking to someone on the other end of the phone line. "Yeah, we got eyes on the apartment. Mother and baby are alone tonight. Boyfriend's at the hospital. Ex-husband's in Manhattan. Window of opportunity opens at 4 a.m. Preston felt sick. These men had been planning to hurt Harper and Arya while he slept comfortably in his penthouse, protected by distance and wealth and willful ignorance. "There's more," Martinez continued. "Bank records show payments from an offshore account linked to several prominent New York families. including yours. My mother. Your mother is in federal custody. She didn't arrange this from prison. Martinez's voice sharpened. Someone else did. Someone with resources, connections, and a very specific skill set. Preston's mind raced. Victoria had allies, people who owed her favors or feared her secrets, but who had the power to arrange professional hits. Who had access to the kind of money that bought silence and eliminated problems. Mr. Whitmore, Martinez said quietly, I've been a detective for 15 years. I've seen a lot of ways people solve their problems. Some use lawyers, some use money, some use connections, and some, she gestured toward the crime scene across the street. Some use methods that leave no room for appeal. Are you saying someone murdered those men to protect Harper? I'm saying someone eliminated a threat to an innocent mother and her baby. Whether you call that murder or justice depends on your perspective. Preston stared at the apartment building where two men had died while planning to hurt the people he loved. Part of him felt sick at the violence. Part of him felt grateful beyond words. Can I see Harper? She's waiting for you. Third floor, apartment 3B. But Mr. Whitmore. Martinez caught his arm as he turned to go. Whoever your guardian angel is, they're playing in a very dangerous league. Make sure you're ready for the consequences. Harper's apartment felt like a fortress under siege. Marcus sat by the window with Arya, his medical training keeping him calm while his protective instincts stayed on high alert. Harper paced the small living room, her energy nervous and electric. When Preston walked in, she flew into his arms without thinking, her body seeking comfort from the man who'd once been her safe harbor. Are you okay? He whispered against her hair. No. Yes. I don't know. She pulled back to look at his face. Preston, they were watching us. For weeks. Taking pictures, recording our conversations, planning. She couldn't finish the sentence. It's over now. Is it? The detective said there might be others. That whoever hired them won't just stop because two men are dead. Marcus looked up from the window where he'd been keeping watch. The question is who killed them and why? Preston's phone buzzed. Another message from a friend. Threat assessment ongoing. Additional security measures implemented. Sleep peacefully. He showed the message to Harper and Marcus, watching their faces as they processed what it meant. Someone's protecting us, Harper said quietly. Someone with the power to make people disappear. Someone who knows about the threats before we do, Marcus added. Someone with access to information we don't have. Preston thought about all the powerful people in his orbit. Business partners, family friends, political connections his mother had cultivated over decades. Who among them had the resources and motivation to wage war in the shadows? His phone rang, a number he recognized but hadn't seen in years. Uncle James. James Whitmore's voice was exactly as Preston remembered, warm, cultured, carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 40 years in government service before retiring to private consulting. Hello, nephew. I thought it was time we had a conversation. Where are you? Closer than you think. May I come up? Preston looked at Harper and Marcus, both of them tense with exhaustion and fear. We're not really in a position for visitors. I'm already in the building. A knock on the door confirmed James's words. Preston opened it to find his father's younger brother standing in the hallway, looking exactly like what he was. A man who'd spent decades making problems disappear for the United States government. James Whitmore was shorter than Preston, silver-haired and quietly elegant, the kind of man who blended into backgrounds until he needed to step forward. He carried himself with the calm confidence of someone who'd survived multiple wars, both declared and undeclared. Harper, James said, nodding respectfully. Marcus, and this must be young Arya. His voice carried genuine warmth as he looked at the baby. She's beautiful. Uncle James, what are you doing here? Cleaning up my sister-in-law's mess. James settled into the small armchair like he belonged there. Victoria always was reckless. Brilliant, but reckless. She never understood that some problems require subtle solutions. Subtile solution, Harper repeated. Like having people killed, James's expression didn't change. Like protecting innocent families from people who mean them harm. The room fell silent except for Arya's soft breathing. Finally, Marcus spoke up. You're the one who's been sending the messages. The guardian angel. I prefer to think of myself as quality control. James smiled slightly. Victoria hired some very unpleasant people to intimidate you, Harper. When intimidation failed, they escalated to more permanent solutions. I simply redirected their attention. Preston stared at his uncle. This quiet man who'd sent Christmas cards and birthday presents throughout Preston's childhood, who'd taught him chess and taken him fishing, who'd apparently been running covert operations while the rest of the family thought he was retired. How many people have you killed? Preston asked quietly. Personally, tonight? None. James's voice was matter of fact. But I've made some phone calls, activated some old relationships, ensured that certain problems won't resurface. Your mother made enemies during her climb to power, Preston. Some of those enemies were happy to help clean up her mistakes. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted had secrets you never imagined? When family members weren't who you thought they were? Share your thoughts. What happens now? Harper asked. Now you live your lives? James said simply. The immediate threats have been neutralized. Victoria's trial will proceed, and she'll spend the rest of her life in prison. Her network of allies is being redistributed, and you, my dear, will raise your daughter in peace. Just like that. Just like that. James stood up, smoothing his coat. Though I would recommend accepting Preston's marriage proposal. Legal protection is still the best protection. Harper's eyes widened. How did you? I make it my business to know things that matter to family. James kissed Harper's forehead gently, like a grandfather blessing a grandchild. You're family now, whether you marry Preston or not. And family takes care of family. As James prepared to leave, Preston caught his arm. Uncle James? Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when Arya graduates from college and never has to wonder if she's safe. James paused at the door. Oh, and Preston? The board meeting yesterday was unfortunate, but not permanent. Empires can be rebuilt. Character cannot. After James left, the three of them sat in stunned silence, processing what they'd learned. Harper was the first to speak. Your family is either completely evil or completely protective. There's no middle ground. Welcome to being a Whitmore, Preston said grimly. Marcus stood up, stretching muscles tight with tension. I need some air, and we need groceries if we're going to feed everyone breakfast. After Marcus left, Preston and Harper found themselves alone with Arya for the first time since the hospital. The apartment felt smaller, more intimate, heavy with unspoken possibilities. About your marriage proposal, Harper said quietly, you don't have to answer tonight. Everything's been, yes. Preston's heart stopped. What? Yes, I'll marry you. For Arya's protection. For legal security. For, Harper looked down at her sleeping daughter. For whatever this is we're building together. Harper, are you sure? She looked up at him, and Preston saw something in her eyes that made his chest tight with hope and terror. I'm sure that I want Arya to grow up safe. I'm sure that I trust you now in ways I couldn't 3 years ago. And I'm sure that whatever we are, friends, family, partners in chaos, it's worth protecting. Preston reached for her hand, and Harper let him take it. What about Marcus? Marcus wants what's best for us. All of us, including you. Harper's voice was soft but certain. He loves Arya enough to share her with a man who's willing to protect her. And he loves me enough to let me choose my own path. Outside, dawn was breaking over Newark, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The city was waking up to a new day, and somewhere in that morning light, Preston saw the possibility of a new life. When? He asked. Soon, before Victoria's allies regroup, before someone else decides we're a threat. Harper squeezed his hand. But Preston, this marriage, it's going to be complicated. We're not the same people we were 3 years ago. I know. I love Marcus. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I know. And you're going to have to learn to live with that. To be okay with sharing a family instead of owning one. Preston looked at Harper, beautiful, fierce, damaged, brave Harper, and felt something shift in his chest. Not the desperate possessiveness he'd felt during their first marriage, but something deeper and more sustainable. I spent 3 years trying to own everything and lost what mattered most, he said quietly. Maybe it's time I learned how to share. As if summoned by their conversation, Marcus returned with coffee and bagels, his face carefully neutral as he read the energy in the room. "So," he said, setting down the bags. "Are we doing this?" "We're doing this," Harper confirmed. "All of us. Together." Marcus studied Preston's face for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but I have conditions." "Name them." "I get to walk her down the aisle at her wedding someday. I get to teach her how to drive. And if you ever hurt Harper again, guardian angel uncle or no guardian angel uncle, I will end you myself." Preston looked at this good man who was willing to share the family he'd built, who loved Harper and Arya enough to welcome their former source of pain back into their lives. "Deal," Preston said. They shook hands over Arya's bassinet. 3 adults choosing to build something unprecedented, a family born not from tradition or biology, but from choice and protection and love in all its messy, complicated forms. In the distance, church bells chimed the hour, and somewhere in federal prison, Victoria Whitmore realized that her son had finally learned to choose love over power. The war was over. The healing was about to begin. 3 weeks later, Harper stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at a woman she'd barely recognized. The white dress, simple, elegant, bought from a department store instead of a designer boutique, hung perfectly on her frame. But it wasn't the dress that made her feel like a stranger. It was the choice she was making. "You look beautiful," Marcus said from the doorway, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and pain that made Harper's chest tight. "I look terrified." "That too." Marcus stepped into the small bathroom, his hands gentle as he adjusted the simple pearl necklace around her neck. "But you also look brave. And right now, brave is what Arya needs." The courthouse wedding had been Preston's idea. Small, private, no media circus or society expectations. Just the 3 of them, Arya, and a judge who'd agreed to perform the ceremony on a Saturday morning for a substantial donation to his favorite charity. "Are you sure about this?" Harper asked, turning to face Marcus. "I mean, really sure? Because once I say those words, everything changes." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't know she'd shed. "Everything already changed the night you decided to fight back instead of run away. This is just making it official. What if I can't do it? What if I can't be married to Preston and still love you? Then we'll figure out as we go." Marcus kissed her forehead, soft and reassuring. "Harper, love isn't a limited resource. You don't run out by sharing it. You just find more." Arya chose that moment to wake from her nap in the living room, her tiny cry breaking through the tension like sunshine through storm clouds. Marcus smiled, the sound of his daughter calling for attention always able to lift his spirits. "See? She's telling us to stop overthinking and get moving." The drive to the courthouse felt like a journey to another planet. Preston sat in the front passenger seat, uncharacteristically quiet, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked almost like nervousness. Harper watched him from the back seat, noting the way his hands fidgeted with his tie, the way he kept checking his phone for messages that weren't coming. "Second thoughts?" she asked quietly. Preston turned to look at her, and Harper was surprised by the vulnerability in his eyes. "Every minute since you said yes. But not the kind you're thinking." "What kind then?" "The kind where I wonder if I deserve this chance. If I deserve to be part of your family after everything I put you through." Harper reached forward and touched his shoulder, a gesture that would have been impossible 3 weeks ago. "None of us deserve the chances we get, Preston. We just try to be worthy of them." The courthouse was busy with Saturday morning business, people getting married, divorced, fighting traffic tickets, settling small claims disputes. Regular people living regular lives, unburdened by the weight of empire and expectation that had crushed Harper's first marriage. Judge Patricia Williams was exactly what Harper had hoped for. Middle-aged, practical, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that made the legal formalities feel more like a conversation between friends. "Before we begin," Judge Williams said, looking at each of them in turn, "I want to make sure everyone understands what we're doing here. Marriage isn't just a contract. It's a promise to show up for each other, especially when showing up is hard." Preston nodded, his expression serious. "I understand, Your Honor. And you, Harper? You're entering this marriage for the right reasons." Harper glanced at Marcus, who stood beside her holding Arya, then at Preston, who looked more nervous than she'd ever seen him. I'm entering this marriage to protect my daughter and build something better than what we had before. If those are the right reasons, then yes. Judge Williams smiled. In my experience, those are the best reasons of all. The ceremony was simple, traditional, nothing like the elaborate society wedding Harper and Preston had shared 3 years ago. No orchestra, no flowers flown in from Ecuador, no guest list that read like a who's who of American wealth. Just words that mattered, spoken by people who meant them. When Judge Williams asked if Preston would take Harper as his wife, to love and cherish and protect her, his voice was steady and sure. I will. When she asked Harper the same question, Harper looked into Preston's eyes and saw not the arrogant man who'd broken her heart, but the father who'd held Arya in the NICU, the son who'd stood up to his monster of a mother, the man who'd given up his empire to keep her safe. I will. The rings were simple gold bands, nothing like the enormous diamond Preston had given her the first time. But when he slipped the ring onto her finger, Harper felt something she hadn't expected: hope. You may kiss the bride, Judge Williams announced. Preston's kiss was gentle, respectful, nothing like the passionate claim of ownership from their first wedding. This kiss was a promise, a beginning, a quiet vow that this time would be different. When they broke apart, Marcus was the first to speak. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore. The words hit Harper like cold water. Mrs. Whitmore, the name she'd fought so hard to escape, now chosen freely to protect the daughter she'd die for. Actually, Preston said quietly, I was thinking maybe we could be Mr. and Mrs. Davis Whitmore, if that's okay with you. Harper stared at him, surprised by the gesture, taking her name, sharing it instead of erasing it, acknowledging that she brought something valuable to this union besides just her willingness to be protected. I'd like that, she said softly, as they signed the marriage certificate, making their union legal and binding. Harper caught Marcus watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Are you okay? She whispered. Marcus smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm proud of you, both of you. This is the right thing to do. But Harper heard what he didn't say. That doing the right thing didn't always feel good. That protecting the people you love sometimes meant accepting arrangements that broke your heart a little bit every day. Outside the courthouse, they stood on the steps like any other newly married couple, except nothing about their situation was like anyone else's. Preston in his simple gray suit, Harper in her department store dress, Marcus holding the baby who'd brought them all together, all of them trying to figure out how to be a family that had never existed before. So what now? Harper asked. Now we go home, Preston said. All of us. Together. But as they walked toward the car, Harper's phone buzzed with a message that made her blood run cold. Congratulations on your wedding, Mrs. Davis Whitmore. Your mother-in-law sends her regards from prison. Enjoy your honeymoon. It might be your last. Some honeymoons are romantic escapes to paradise. Others are survival tests disguised as vacations. Harper was beginning to suspect theirs was the latter. The cabin in the Adirondacks looked perfect from the outside. Rustic luxury nestled among pine trees, with a private lake and enough isolation to make even the most determined paparazzi think twice. Preston had booked it as a place for them to figure out their new arrangement away from the chaos of New York. But something felt wrong from the moment they arrived. The caretaker was supposed to meet us, Preston said, checking his phone for the third time in 10 minutes. He's not answering his phone. Marcus carried their bags from the car, his medical training making him naturally alert to danger signs that others might miss. When did you last speak to him? 2 days ago. He confirmed everything was ready. Preston's voice carried a note of concern that made Harper's stomach tighten. The cabin was beautiful inside. Exposed beams, stone fireplace, comfortable furniture that managed to be both elegant and cozy. But Harper noticed details that made her uneasy. Windows without locks, a back door that didn't properly close, a landline phone with no dial tone. Maybe we should go back to the city, she said, settling Arya into the portable crib they'd brought from home. We just got here, Preston said, but his tone suggested he was having similar thoughts. Marcus stood by the large front window, scanning the tree line that surrounded the property. How many people knew you were coming here? Just my assistant, the rental company, and Preston's face went pale. And the security firm that was supposed to sweep the property before we arrived. The same security firm your mother used, different company. But Preston pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts, but recommended by the same lawyer who handled the cabin rental. Harper felt that familiar cold fear settling in her chest, the same feeling she'd lived with for 3 years whenever Victoria's influence touched her life. "We need to leave," she said quietly. Now, as if summoned by her words, car doors slammed outside. Through the front window, they could see 2 black SUVs parked in the circular driveway, men in dark clothing emerging from the vehicles with the kind of calm efficiency that spoke of military training. "Back door," Marcus said immediately, moving toward Aria's crib. But when Preston checked the rear exit, more men were visible through the trees, positioned to cut off any escape route. "We're surrounded," Preston said, his voice deadly calm. Harper's phone rang. Victoria's number, somehow calling from federal prison. "Answer it," Marcus said. "Put on speaker." Harper's hands shook as she accepted the call. Victoria's voice filled the cabin, cold and satisfied and absolutely triumphant. "Hello, darling. How's the honeymoon? How are you calling us? You're in prison." Victoria's laugh was like ice cracking. "Oh, sweetheart, did you really think prison would stop me? I've been planning this moment since the day you decided to destroy my family. What do you want?" "I want my granddaughter. I want Preston to remember who he really belongs to. And I want you to understand that there are consequences for crossing the Whitmore family." Through the windows, the men were moving closer to the cabin, their movements coordinated and professional. Whatever Victoria had planned, it wasn't going to end with conversation. "You can't just take Aria," Preston said, his voice carrying the authority he'd once used to run boardrooms. "She's not your family. The DNA test proved." "The DNA test proved whatever I wanted it to prove," Victoria interrupted. "Did you really think I'd leave something that important to chance? That baby is a Whitmore, no matter what some manipulated laboratory results claim." Harper felt the world tilt sideways. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Dr. Williams wasn't the only one on my payroll, darling. The lab technician who processed your DNA samples has been very well compensated for his flexibility. Aria is Preston's daughter, which makes her my granddaughter, which gives me legal standing to claim custody when her parents meet with an unfortunate accident." The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. The isolated location, the disabled phone, the men surrounding the cabin. Victoria had orchestrated everything from her prison cell, using connections and resources Harper had never imagined existed. "She's been planning this since before Aria was born," Marcus said quietly. "The whole thing, the harassment, the attempts on your life, even the fake DNA results. All of it was designed to get us exactly where we are right now." Preston stared at his phone, his face white with rage and disbelief. "Mother, you've lost your mind. You can't murder people and steal babies and expect." "I expect to get my granddaughter back." Victoria's voice cut through his protest like a blade. "The men outside have very specific instructions. Bring Aria to me unharmed. Everyone else, well, accidents happen in remote locations." A knock on the front door interrupted the call. Polite, professional, like someone delivering a package instead of death. "You have 5 minutes to decide," Victoria continued. "Hand over the baby willingly, and perhaps Preston survives to raise her properly. Fight us, and all 3 of you become tragic statistics while Aria disappears into the foster system until I can arrange proper custody." The line went dead. Harper looked at Marcus and Preston, both men she loved in different ways, both ready to die protecting her daughter. Aria slept peacefully in her crib, oblivious to the war being fought over her tiny life. "Ideas," Harper whispered. Preston moved to a closet, emerging with a hunting rifle that had been stored with the cabin supplies. "We fight against trained killers?" Marcus shook his head. "We need to be smarter than that." "Then what do you suggest?" Before Marcus could answer, Harper's phone buzzed with a text from a number that had been helping them. "Stay calm. Help is coming. Uncle James keeps his promises." But when Harper looked out the window, The men were no longer moving toward the cabin. They were looking over their shoulders, turning their attention to something in the forest behind them. Gunfire erupted from the tree-line. Sharp, professional, deadly accurate. The men who'd been surrounding the cabin suddenly found themselves surrounded, caught between the trees and the building with nowhere to run. "Get down!" Preston shouted, pulling Harper and Arya toward the floor as bullets shattered the cabin's windows. The battle was brief but intense. When the shooting stopped, an eerie silence settled over the property, broken only by Arya's crying and the sound of approaching footsteps. A knock on the door, different from before, 3 quick raps followed by 2 slower ones. "Family meeting's over." Uncle James's voice called through the door. "It's safe to come out." Harper had never been so happy to hear anyone's voice in her life. James entered the cabin like he was arriving for Sunday dinner, completely calm despite the war zone outside. Behind him, men in tactical gear were efficiently cleaning up the scene, removing bodies and evidence with the kind of professionalism that suggested they'd done this before. "Sorry about the windows," James said, surveying the damage. But Victoria's people were surprisingly well trained. Took longer than expected to neutralize the threat. "Is it over?" Harper asked, still clutching Arya protectively. "This part is. But Victoria..." James's expression grew grim. "She's more resourceful than I anticipated. Prison won't hold her much longer." "What do you mean?" "I mean she's arranged for a transfer to a minimum security facility based on health concerns that don't exist. From there, escape will be much easier." James looked at each of them in turn. "This family needs to disappear. Completely. New identities, new country, new lives." Preston stood up, glass crunching under his feet. "Running won't solve this. She'll keep coming." "Then we end it," Harper said quietly. Both men stared at her. "What are you proposing?" James asked. "I'm proposing we stop reacting and start acting. Victoria wants Arya? Fine. Let her think she's won. Sometimes the only way to win a war is to lose every battle until your enemy thinks they've already won." Harper was betting everything on Victoria's greatest weakness, her absolute belief that she was smarter than everyone else. The plan was insane, dangerous, and completely dependent on timing that had to be perfect. But it was also the only way to end Victoria's reign of terror once and for all. "You want to use Arya as bait," Marcus said, his voice flat with disbelief. "You want to hand our daughter to a woman who's tried to kill you multiple times." "I want to give Victoria exactly what she thinks she wants," Harper corrected, "under conditions that ensure she can never hurt anyone again." They sat in Uncle James's safe house in upstate New York, surrounded by enough security equipment to run a small war. Maps covered the walls. Phones buzzed constantly with updates from contacts Harper was learning existed throughout the government. And Arya slept peacefully in a bulletproof bassinet that looked like something from a science fiction movie. "Explain it again," Preston said, his face pale but determined. "Step by step." Harper spread out the documents James had provided: prison layouts, guard schedules, transfer routes, and visiting protocols. "Victoria is being moved to Danbury Federal Prison next week. Minimum security, family visits allowed, much easier to escape from." "Right. And she's arranged for a custody hearing the day after the transfer. Emergency petition claiming new evidence about Arya's paternity." Harper's voice was steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. "She wants me to bring Arya to the hearing. In person. For DNA testing that will prove she's been telling the truth all along." James nodded approvingly. "Victoria is convinced she's orchestrated the perfect trap. You walk into that courthouse with Arya, and she has you exactly where she wants you. Except we'll be ready for her," Harper continued. "Preston testifies about the fake DNA results. Marcus presents his evidence about the harassment campaign, and I tell the truth about 3 years of terror." "That's not enough," Marcus said. "She's got lawyers, judges in her pocket, connections we don't even know about. A custody hearing isn't going to stop her." "You're right. A custody hearing won't stop her." Harper's smile was sharp as broken glass. "But what happens during the hearing will." She pulled out a small recording device, no bigger than a button. "Victoria can't resist gloating when she thinks she's won. Get her talking about the murders, the conspiracy, the fake evidence. Get it all on record in front of a federal judge. That's incredibly dangerous, James said quietly. If something goes wrong, if she realizes what you're doing, if something goes wrong, I'll be dead and Arya will be lost forever anyway. Harper's voice carried absolute certainty. At least this way, we're fighting back instead of just running. Preston stood up, pacing the small room like a caged animal. I can't let you do this. I can't watch you walk into Victoria's trap and hope everything works out. You're not watching. You're participating. Harper caught his hand, stopping his nervous movement. Victoria expects you to choose between your mother and your wife. She's counting on family loyalty to make you hesitate when it matters most. So what do? You choose Arya. Publicly. Completely. You testify against your own mother to protect your daughter. The weight of what Harper was asking settled over Preston like a burial shroud. Testifying against Victoria wouldn't just destroy her. It would destroy the Whitmore family legacy, the empire his grandfather had built, the reputation that had taken generations to establish. She's right, James said quietly. Victoria's weakness has always been her absolute belief that blood is thicker than everything else. She can't imagine Preston choosing his new family over his birth family. What if she's right? Preston asked. What if when the moment comes, I can't do it? Harper looked at this man she'd married twice. Once for love that wasn't enough. Once for protection that might not work. But sitting in this safe house, planning to risk everything to save their daughter, she saw something in Preston's eyes that hadn't been there during their first marriage. Then we'll all die knowing we tried, she said simply. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday at Danbury Federal Courthouse. 5 days to prepare, to rehearse, to gather evidence, and coordinate with contacts who operated in shadows deeper than Harper had known existed. Marcus spent those days compiling medical records, police reports, and insurance claims that painted a clear picture of Victoria's 3-year campaign of terror. Preston worked with James to document the financial conspiracy, tracing money flows and communication records that connected Victoria to every attempt on Harper's life. And Harper practiced telling her story, not the sanitized version she'd shared with reporters, but the raw, brutal truth of what it felt like to live in constant fear, to never feel safe, to raise a child under the shadow of threats that never ended. Remember, James coached her, Victoria will try to make you angry. She'll attack your character, your fitness as a mother, your relationship with Marcus. Don't take the bait. Stay calm, stick to facts, and let her hang herself with her own words. The night before the hearing, Harper stood in the safe house nursery, watching Arya sleep. Tomorrow, she would carry her daughter into the most dangerous situation of their lives, betting everything on a plan that could backfire in a dozen different ways. Second thoughts. Marcus asked from the doorway. Every second. Harper didn't turn around, but not about doing it, about whether I'm strong enough to pull it off. Marcus entered the room, his presence immediately comforting. You're the strongest person I know. You survived Victoria for 3 years. You brought Arya safely into the world despite everything she tried to do. You rebuilt your life from nothing. With your help, with your courage. Marcus touched her shoulder gently. Tomorrow, Victoria is going to see exactly who she's been fighting, and she's going to realize she picked the wrong battle. Harper leaned back against Marcus's chest, drawing strength from his steady presence. What if something happens to me? What if Victoria wins? Then Preston and I will raise Arya together, and we'll make sure she knows how brave her mother was. The idea of Marcus and Preston co-parenting without her should have been strange, impossible. But Harper found comfort in imagining them united in their love for Arya, building the kind of family that transcended traditional boundaries. Promise me something, Harper said quietly. Anything. If this goes wrong, don't let Preston blame himself. He spent too many years carrying guilt that isn't his to carry. Marcus was quiet for a moment. And what about me? If something happens to you, how do I not blame myself for letting you walk into that courthouse? Harper turned in his arms, looking up at the face of the man who'd become her anchor in every storm. You remember that I chose this. Not because I'm reckless or because I don't value my life, but because some things are worth a risk. They held each other in the quiet nursery, listening to Aria's peaceful breathing, both of them knowing that tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. Preston appeared in the doorway, his face drawn with exhaustion and worry. The car will be here at 8. James says the courthouse is secure, but Victoria's full of surprises, Harper finished. I know. Preston stepped into the room, completing their unlikely triangle. I need you both to know something. Whatever happens tomorrow, this has been the most real thing in my life. This family we've built, this thing we have, it's worth everything I've lost and everything I might lose. Harper looked at these two men who loved her and Aria in different ways, who'd found a way to work together despite every reason to be rivals, who were willing to risk everything to protect what they'd built together. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said, we face it together, outside. Uncle James's security team maintained their vigilant watch, protecting the family that had become the center of a war they never asked for. Inside, 3 adults and 1 sleeping baby prepared for a battle that would either free them forever or destroy them completely. The final gambit was about to begin. Federal courthouse steps have witnessed 1,000 dramas, but few as dangerous as the one about to unfold. Harper walked up those steps carrying Aria, flanked by Preston and Marcus, knowing that Victoria waited inside like a spider in the center of her web. Judge Margaret Torres had a reputation for being tough, fair, and completely immune to intimidation. But Harper wondered if even Judge Torres understood what kind of case she was about to oversee. The courtroom was packed, reporters, social workers, federal marshals, and enough lawyers to staff a small firm. But Harper's attention immediately went to the defense table, where Victoria sat in an orange prison jumpsuit, somehow managing to look regal despite her circumstances. Their eyes met across the courtroom, and Victoria's smile was pure poison. Here we go, Preston murmured, taking his seat at the plaintiff's table. The hearing began with Victoria's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Crane, presenting what appeared to be overwhelming evidence. New DNA test results, sworn affidavits from medical professionals, financial records suggesting Harper had been blackmailing the Whitmore family for years. Your Honor, Crane said, her voice carrying absolute confidence. My client has been the victim of an elaborate fraud. Harper Davis has spent 3 years manipulating the system, hiding the true paternity of her child, and systematically destroying the Whitmore family reputation. Harper listened to lie after lie, watching Judge Torres's expression grow more skeptical with each ridiculous claim. But she also noticed something else. Victoria kept glancing at the courtroom doors, as if expecting someone who hadn't arrived. When Crane finished her opening statement, Preston's lawyer, David Kim, stood to respond. But before he could speak, Harper's phone buzzed with a text from Uncle James. Trap within a trap. Victoria's not planning to win this hearing. She's planning to end it. Harper's blood turned to ice. Victoria hadn't arranged this hearing to gain custody through legal means. She'd arranged it to gather everyone she wanted to eliminate in one place at one time. Mr. Kim, Judge Torres said, you may present your opening statement. But before Kim could respond, Harper stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to represent myself. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Torres banged her gavel for order. Ms. Davis, I strongly advise against representing yourself in a custody matter of this complexity. I understand, Your Honor, but there are things that need to be said, and I'm the only one who can say them. Harper walked to the center of the courtroom, Aria sleeping peacefully in her arms, and began to speak. Your Honor, for 3 years I've been running from the truth because I was afraid no one would believe it. Today I'm going to tell you exactly what Victoria Whitmore has done to my family. She spoke for 20 minutes, laying out every detail of Victoria's campaign of terror. The car accidents, the poisoning, the hired killers, the fake DNA results, all of it documented, recorded, witnessed. But as she spoke, Harper noticed more concerning signs. Federal marshals whispering into radios. Courtroom doors being quietly locked. Victoria's smile growing wider with each passing minute. And now, Harper concluded, Victoria Whitmore wants custody of my daughter, not because she loves her, but because she wants to control her. Because in Victoria's world, people are property to be owned, not individuals to be loved. Judge Torres looked troubled by what she'd heard, but also confused by the evidence Victoria's team had presented. Ms. Whitmore, the judge said, "You have the right to respond to these allegations." Victoria stood up, and for the first time since Harper had known her, she looked genuinely pleased. "Your Honor, I have one simple question for Ms. Davis." Victoria's voice carried absolute confidence. "If I'm such a monster, if I've really tried to kill you multiple times, why did you come here today? Why bring your precious daughter directly to me?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Harper felt every eye in the courtroom focused on her, waiting for an answer that would determine not just custody, but survival. Because Harper said quietly, "I wanted to give you exactly what you've always wanted, the chance to tell everyone how smart you are." Victoria's smile faltered slightly. "What?" "I wanted you to confess, Victoria. Right here, in front of a federal judge, with court reporters recording every word." Harper pulled out the small recording device she'd been carrying. "I wanted you to brag about the murders, the conspiracies, the fake evidence. Because you can't help yourself, can you? You always have to prove you're the smartest person in the room." Victoria's face went white as she realized she'd been outmaneuvered. "You think you've trapped me?" Victoria's voice rose, losing the controlled tone she'd maintained throughout the hearing. "You stupid girl. I've been planning this for months. Every detail, every contingency, including the part where you confess to federal crimes in open court, including the part where none of you leave this courthouse alive." Victoria's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the monster beneath. "Do you think I'd arrange a hearing just to win custody? I arranged this to eliminate all my problems at once." Judge Torres stood up, her face grave. "Ms. Whitmore, are you threatening violence in my courtroom?" Victoria laughed, wild and unhinged. "I'm promising it, Your Honor. My associates are already in position. The building is surrounded. And in about 5 minutes, there's going to be a tragic gas explosion that kills everyone in this room except my granddaughter and the federal marshals who miraculously survive to take her safety." The courtroom erupted in panic. People rushed toward doors that wouldn't open. Federal marshals spoke urgently into radios, and Judge Torres demanded order that couldn't be restored. But Harper stayed calm, because Uncle James had prepared her for exactly this scenario. "There's just one problem with your plan, Victoria," Harper said, her voice somehow carrying over the chaos. "What's that, darling?" "You assumed your associates were still loyal to you." As if summoned by her words, the courtroom doors burst open. But instead of Victoria's hired killers, Uncle James entered with a team of federal agents, all of them very much alive and very much in control. "Victoria Whitmore," James announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempting to murder federal officers, and terrorizing the court." Victoria stared at her brother-in-law with pure hatred. "You sanctimonious fool. Do you think this changes anything? I have resources you can't imagine, connections you've never heard of." "Had," James corrected. "Past tense. Your accounts are frozen, your allies have been arrested, and your conspiracy is completely dismantled." He smiled with satisfaction. "Did you really think I'd let you threaten my family without consequences?" As federal agents handcuffed Victoria, she screamed at Harper with all the venom she'd been holding back for 3 years. "You think you've won? You think this is over? I'll spend every day of my life destroying you. I'll make sure that baby grows up knowing her mother is. Her mother is the bravest woman I've ever known," Preston said, standing up and walking to Harper's side. "And her father is going to make sure she never has to be afraid of you again." Victoria stared at her son, her face contorting with rage and disbelief. "You're choosing her over your own family?" "I'm choosing my family," Preston said quietly. "The one I helped create, the one worth protecting." As they led Victoria away, still screaming threats and promises of revenge, Judge Torres called for order in a courtroom that had just witnessed the complete destruction of one of New York's most powerful families. "In all my years on the bench," Judge Torres said, "I have never seen anything like this. Ms. Davis, custody is awarded to you and your husband, with no further challenges permitted." But Harper barely heard the judge's words. She was looking at Preston and Marcus, both men who'd risked everything to protect her and Aria, both of them smiling with the relief of people who'd survived the impossible. "Is it really over?" Harper asked Uncle James as they prepared to leave the courthouse. "This part is," James said. "Victoria will spend the rest of her life in maximum security prison. Her network is destroyed, her resources are gone, and her reputation is finished. And the Whitmore legacy?" James looked at Preston, then at Harper and Aria, then at Marcus. "The Whitmore legacy is whatever this family chooses to make it." As they walked down the courthouse steps, Harper realized that for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. Aria was safe, her family was intact, and the future stretched ahead of them like an open road. The war was finally over. The healing could begin. 6 months later, Harper stood in the kitchen of their new house in Connecticut, watching through the window as Preston and Marcus built a swing set in the backyard. Their movements were coordinated now, comfortable, 2 men who'd learned to work together for the sake of the family they all loved. Aria sat in her high chair, banging a spoon against her tray and babbling happily at the chaos around her. At 9 months old, she was curious about everything, fearless in the way that children are when they grow up surrounded by adults who would die to protect them. Higher on the left side, Harper called through the window, laughing as both men immediately adjusted their work without questioning her engineering expertise. The house was perfect for them, big enough for privacy, small enough to feel like home, surrounded by neighbors who cared more about block parties than stock prices. Harper had her own office where she ran the foundation Preston's company had established, helping families escape domestic violence. Marcus had opened a small family practice in town, and Preston had discovered he actually enjoyed teaching business ethics at the local college more than running a corporate empire. They'd all changed in ways none of them had expected. "Door," Aria announced, pointing toward the front of the house where the doorbell was ringing. Harper wiped her hands on a dish towel and went to answer it, surprised to find Uncle James standing on their porch with a bottle of champagne and a manila envelope. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" Harper asked, inviting him in. "Good news and official business," James said, settling into the comfortable living room that bore no resemblance to the sterile perfection of Preston's old penthouse. Victoria's appeals have been exhausted. Life in prison, no possibility of parole, no further legal challenges permitted. Harper felt a weight she'd been carrying for months finally lift from her shoulders. "It's really over? It's really over." James handed her the envelope. "These are the final adoption papers. Preston is now Aria's legal father in every sense that matters. No one can ever challenge that again." Harper opened the envelope with shaking hands, reading the official documents that made their chosen family legally binding. Preston Davis Whitmore was listed as father, Harper Davis Whitmore as mother, and Marcus Thompson as guardian and co-parent. An arrangement that had required new legal precedents, but ultimately been approved by a family court judge who understood that love comes in many forms. "There's something else," James continued. "Victoria left a final message for you." Harper's stomach clenched. What kind of message? The kind that proves she never understood what she was fighting. James pulled out a letter written in Victoria's precise handwriting. "She wants you to know that she still believes she was right, that family bloodlines matter more than chosen bonds, that Aria will eventually seek out her real grandmother." Harper read the letter quickly, then handed it to Preston and Marcus as they came in from the backyard, both of them sweaty and satisfied from their construction project. "She still doesn't get it," Preston said after reading Victoria's final attempt at manipulation. "After everything that happened, she still thinks DNA matters more than love." "Should we be worried?" Marcus asked, his protective instincts always alert where Aria was concerned. "From Victoria? No." James's voice was certain. "She'll spend the rest of her life in a maximum security cell, with no contact allowed except supervised legal visits. Her influence is completely gone. Harper looked around their living room, at the photos covering every surface showing their unconventional family growing together, at Aria's toys scattered across the floor, at the men who'd learned to love each other through their shared love for her and her daughter. You know what the funny thing is? Harper said, Victoria has spent 3 years trying to destroy our family, and instead she helped us build something stronger than anything we would have created on our own. It was true. The crisis had forced them to be honest about what really mattered, to choose each other over convention, to build something unprecedented and beautiful. Preston tossed Victoria's letter into the fireplace, watching the flames consume her final attempt to divide them. Some people never learned that you can't destroy love. You can only make it stronger. Over dinner that night, takeout from a Chinese restaurant in town, eaten around the kitchen table with Aria, making a delighted mess in her high chair. They talked about the future they were building together. The foundation approved 15 new shelters this month, Harper reported, pride evident in her voice. We're helping more families than I ever imagined possible. And my practice is growing, Marcus added. Turns out people actually like having a doctor who makes house calls and remembers their kids' names. What about you? Harper asked Preston. Any regrets about giving up the corporate world? Preston looked at his family, his wife feeding their daughter, his friend and co-parent planning weekend projects, the house filled with laughter and chaos and love, and shook his head. I spent 15 years building an empire that made me miserable, he said. Now I'm helping build human beings who might actually make the world better. It's not even close. After dinner, they followed their established routine. Marcus gave Aria her bath while Harper cleaned the kitchen and Preston prepared bottles for the night feeding. The domestic harmony they'd achieved had taken months to develop, but now it felt as natural as breathing. Story time, Marcus announced, carrying a pajama-clad Aria into the living room. They sat together on the couch, Harper in the middle, Preston and Marcus on either side, Aria on Harper's lap, while Marcus read from a children's book about a little girl who lived with her mommy and 2 daddies who loved her very much. That's you, sweetheart, Harper whispered to Aria. You're the little girl in the story. Aria babbled happily, reaching for the colorful pictures, completely secure in the knowledge that she was the center of 3 adults' worlds. As they put Aria to bed, Harper watched Preston and Marcus work together to tuck her in, both men gentle and natural in their fatherly roles. The jealousy and competition she'd feared never materialized. Instead, they found a way to complement each other, to be different kinds of fathers to the same beloved child. Sweet dreams, little one, Preston whispered, kissing Aria's forehead. Sleep tight, princess, Marcus added, adjusting her blanket. Harper was the last to say goodnight, looking down at her daughter's peaceful face and marveling at the journey that had brought them all to this moment. You are so loved, she whispered, by all of us, forever. Later, as they sat on the back porch sharing a bottle of wine and watching fireflies dance in the summer darkness, Harper felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. Do you think she'll understand? She asked. When she's older, when people ask questions about our family, she'll understand that love comes in many forms, Marcus said, and that the best families are the ones we choose. She'll understand that her mother was brave enough to fight for what mattered, Preston added, and that courage is the most important thing we can teach her. Harper leaned back in her chair, surrounded by the men who'd become her partners in building something unprecedented. They weren't a traditional family, but they were real in ways that transcended convention. I have an announcement, she said suddenly. Both men looked at her with concern, worried by her serious tone. I am pregnant. The silence that followed was complete. No sound except crickets and the distant hum of summer evening traffic. Pregnant, Preston repeated slowly. Pregnant, Marcus echoed. Harper nodded, suddenly nervous about their reactions. 8 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Whose? Preston started to ask, then stopped himself. I'm sorry, that's not the right question. The right question, Harper said gently, is whether you're both ready to do this again. Whether our family is ready to grow. Marcus was the first to move, kneeling beside Harper's chair and taking her hands in his. "Are you happy about it?" "Terrified and thrilled in equal measure," Harper admitted. "But yes, I'm happy." Preston joined Marcus on the ground, both men looking up at the woman who'd brought them together in the most unlikely circumstances. "We're going to need a bigger swing set," Preston said, and Harper started laughing. "We're going to need a lot of things," she said, "but we'll figure out together." As they sat together on the porch, planning for the expansion of their unconventional family, Harper realized that Victoria had been wrong about almost everything. Blood didn't make families, choice did. Power didn't create security, love did. And sometimes the most beautiful things grew from the most broken soil. 6 months ago, she'd been a terrified single mother protecting her baby from a monster. Tonight, she was a woman surrounded by people who'd chosen to love her, preparing to bring another child into a family built on courage and forgiveness and hope. The price of falling had been everything she thought she wanted, but what she'd found at the bottom was everything she actually needed. In the distance, church bells chimed midnight, marking the end of one day and the beginning of another. Harper Davis Whitmore sat between the two men who'd learned to love each other through loving her, her hand resting on the barely there curve of new life, and smiled at the future stretching ahead of them like a road leading home. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ended with something better. Happily ever together, chosen family and all. Thank you for joining us on Harper's Journey. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more tales of love, courage, and families that refuse to be defined by convention. What would you have done in Harper's situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know where you're watching from around the world. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we choose to build together.